my screen.
You go. I'm going to be on 30. I'll be back in 30 seconds. You go.
No problem.
Or you let them load, I think.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll just give a couple of minutes for everyone to log in. While we're waiting, you can feel free to introduce yourself and your organization in the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from. It's excellent to have you. We'll just give folks about a couple of minutes to log in and join us. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Please, while we wait for everyone to log in, please feel free to introduce yourself, your country, and your organization in the chat. And we'll get started here in just 1 minute. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we will be going over U.S. government rules and regulations, cost principles, and we're excited for our presenter today. A few housekeeping things. Please continue to let us know where you're from in the chat. If at any point during today's presentation you have a question, please ask your questions in the question and answer box that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And you can ask your questions at any point during today's presentation. We'll have a few stops today for Q&A, but whenever your question arises, please feel free to ask it in the Q&A box. We'll also be using the raise hand feature today. So if you, when the presenter asks for a show of hands, please feel free to use that raise hand feature. The presentation for today's webinar will be saved on ASAP's website at www.intrahealth.org/ASAP resources, as well as a recording of today's webinar. The recording and presentation will be available for 30 days after today's webinar. So please find that recording, watch it, and download it prior to the end of the 30 days. USAID and ASAP have broadcasted over 105 webinars for more than 22,000 attendees in 76 different countries. Many, if not most, of these webinars are available on the ASAP resources website. Many of our webinars are available in 3 different languages, so feel free to filter by language or topic in whatever language is best for you. We record our webinars in English, French, and Portuguese. We have many upcoming webinars. Next week, we have webinars on institutionalizing good human resources practices, non-US local partners, mandatory, required, and as applicable standard provisions, some leadership and governance, organizational capacity and compliance assessments, as well as many others upcoming. So please feel free to register for any and all of the webinars that you find interesting. We're excited to have Doug Franke join us again today. He has done many webinars for us and is a popular presenter. He is a managing partner with Sustainability Solutions. He has been a partner at PwC before founding SSPC, has 42 years of on-the-ground experience with USAID and USG rules and regulations. He is a Yellow Book audit expert. He has NGOs and LIPs worldwide as his clients, and only peer-reviewed audit firm in Africa. He has also presented for us at many local partner organization meetings, and again has done many webinars. So we're thrilled to have Doug with us today. And Doug, I'll pass it over to you to continue with our presentation.
Great. Thanks so much, Melissa. And let's just say hello, everyone. Welcome back. Happy New Year for the final time. Yeah, it's great to see so many people online from all over the world. We're quite excited about that. Sorry for the guys over in the Far East, Manila. It's a late night for you, but yeah, I think it's going to be worth the time that you're going to spend. So let me just get some slides up here, and I'll share my screen. Thanks, Melissa. And we can get started here. So what we are going to do, let's just go here. We'll get the highlighter going as well. Sometimes that helps, the annotator that enables me to highlight what what you're looking at. Okay, so you see a little dot there. Okay, so we're gonna do this from the beginning. Let's move this up around screens. Favorite Zoom video. Let's go here. Okay, so welcome. What today we're going to talk about for the next 2 hours is pretty much focused on the cost principles. But also, if we have time, we're going to sneak in some audit discussions. That'll be at the end if we have time, because really at the end of the day, I mean, we spend money and it gets audited for most of us at the end of the year. And if you don't pass your audit, normally it's because something went wrong with the cost principle. We didn't know how to spend it, didn't know how to document it, didn't know how to allocate it, didn't know whether it was allowable or not. Okay, so we're going to go over a few things. Now, just as Melissa said, great, 42 years, and I feel it, but you know, it's really been enjoyable. And you know, the most fun has been actually coming to your towns and cities and countries and doing the training in person. I know sometimes this is impersonal. I'm sorry. We are starting again. We're going to be sending out notes to all the organizations who we've ever done in every country physical training. So we're getting back onto that as well. Okay, so you know, virtual is okay. Our next virtual course, the full one, starts on March 7th. But yeah, this is going to give you an indication of the types of stuff that the types of information one has to grasp to be a proper and competent U.S. government partner. Okay, so we sort of start with the puzzle, and many of you have been in our courses in the past, but the concept here is that, and many of you could be quite new to USAID and the U.S. government. So let's just do that. Our first couple of hands up. Okay, I see we have a good number of people online, but let's just try this. Okay, if you are relatively new or new to U.S. government rules and regulations, please put your hand up. So let's just say between, you know, you're brand new to 1 year. Okay, if you are 1 year new to the U.S. government, please put your hand up. Okay. And we'll see here. Melissa, are you seeing any hands go up? I'm not.
So we have about 13 to 14. Some people are putting them in the chat. Up to 16.
Great. Okay. So if then you are, thank you for that. You can put your hands down. If you're between 1 year and 4 years, so you've been around for most of a project, that would be the next question. So 1 to 4 years.
Okay. Hovering right now between 25 to 30 and rising.
Okay, I think some people are looking for that where the button is.
Should be at the bottom of your screen. It says raise hand. Yeah, it looks like it's hovering between 25 and 30, Doug.
Okay, and then all the rest of you, this will give us an indication of who's actually participating. But if you are 4 years and more, okay, that would be like helpful to know, because out of we have about 300 people on, so we've only covered about 60 so far. So maybe all of you, maybe we have 240 who are more than 4 years. Okay, the reason this is important is because we tailor the course for you, and it is people's level of understanding helps me to figure out how much we have to cover certain items. Okay, what do we have, Melissa?
So it's hovering at about 20 to 25.
Okay, okay, great. So that is helpful to a degree. Great. So what I'm going to say is we're starting with what we call the USAID puzzle. And the concept here is that when you're new to US government, your understanding of US aid in this case is like a puzzle. A lot of pieces, you've heard about things, but you don't see the big picture, or you don't see any picture. And so the whole point is, when we start putting the pieces together, the 4 most important pieces of a puzzle, of course, are the corners, because you can identify them by the straight edges. Okay, and for all of you out there, everyone, the most important thing you can do is read your award. Okay, your award has all the rules and regulations that really will apply to you. And that's the beauty of USAID, is that they basically put most things in the award and in the schedule and in the attachment. So if we were physical, I'd be working with you to say, okay, here's a picture of your cooperative agreement, and we'll talk about the cooperative agreement. Then we talk about the reference documents, which are attached, right? And that's what you have to follow. It's called the Bob Strauss rule of the 4 corners concept. Everything you will be held to from an auditor's point of view or a legal point of view is within the 4 corners of your award. Okay, so everyone should read some of the award. And when I say some of the award, the very first section of the award is called the schedule. Schedule A, that is all the important elements. Okay, so that's it. And then those pieces, and then we start pulling together the standard provisions. And Melissa showed you the schedule for that. I'm not exactly sure, Melissa, when that's coming up, but it is coming up soon. Oh, it's standard provisions as February. It's a week from now, as a matter of fact. Okay, the next one, which is some of the other pieces of this puzzle. And then we're talking about the cost principles right now. And so those are some more very important pieces, and a few other regs and rules and regulations, which are generally in your award. And then finally, the A is left out here. Okay, the A, you're going to say, well, I know what that stands for. That stands for agency. But in this context, it stands for A for your audit. Okay, and that's why if we have time, we're going to finish with audit, because everything's cool until you come to the audit, and then hopefully you and the auditor don't have any significant findings. Okay, but most people do have findings, and again, the more compliant you are, you will have to pay back nothing, or unfortunately, if you have ineligible costs that are not allowable, alcohol, bad debts, certain types of entertainment, fines, you'll pay those back. Okay, so our goal is that you pay nothing back. You spend every penny achieving your goals and objectives. Okay, the A pops in there. Okay, so here is a very busy slide. And again, anyone who's been on the other courses will have seen this before. But conceptually here, your agreement officer, your AO, okay, he or she has a warrant to bind the US government, and they create your award. And it's a creation. It's not just a cut and paste. You're all doing different things. Some people HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, democracy and governance. We're doing economic development and lots of different things. And so your award is fairly unique. There's a structure, but the content's going to be unique. Okay, so your AO, whether it's based in Washington or in your mission, they work with their team, and they work with the ANA specialists to put together an award that's going to work for you. So that's why we put that in the middle. That COAG notice of award, CDC calls it a notice of award, but it is of a cooperative agreement. Okay, so the whole point here is read your award, because the AO should have read those. So these green boxes are basically the different components of the uniform guidance, the UG, which is changing very soon. And I'm going to go over the top 25 or 6 items that are changing that you need to be aware of. Okay, but basically, so we're going to be focusing on today, we're going to be focusing on let's just go here, subpart E, which is the cost principles. And if we have time, subpart F, the audit requirements. Okay, actually, subpart F doesn't apply to non-US organizations, the yellow book or GAGA supplies. Okay, a lot of confusion there. Let's just do a quick show of hands. How many of you are let's just get this one out of the way quickly first. How many people are sort of USAID employees or work for the mission or work for other parts of the government? Because that's a separate discussion there, but it's just good to know. Hopefully we do have some ANA people or OFM, finance office, technical people, AORs, M&E people. So please put your hand up for a quick second there so Melissa can count. What do we have, Melissa? Any?
Giving a few people time. Yeah, it looks about 15.
Great. Okay. So, I mean, they'll know what we're talking about. They could have been involved in putting things together. Okay. Now, the next big question is your organization US based or non-US based? And the reason I say this is there's actually different rules for US based versus non-US based. So please put your hand up if you are first non-US based. Okay, everyone who's in the Philippines or in Africa or in Asia or in Europe, okay, if you are a local organization, okay, and I'm not talking about the foreign or your local organization of a U.S. based, like an IntraHealth, FHI, CARE, Save the Children. I'm talking about a local organization. How many of you are local organizations? Because that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about, the rules for local organizations. I'd expect to see about 120, hopefully.
Yeah, the number's at 65, but it's continuing to rise. So I would imagine it's over 100.
Great. Okay. Then with that and done, then how many of you are US based? As I said, and I tried to use like FHI because I think everyone knows FHI 360, great organization, worked with them forever. But there's others. There's IntraHealth, there is CARE, Save the Children, Johns Hopkins. You've got all the universities, Washington, ICAP. Put your hand up if you are a US-based organization.
That one's hovering at about 20 to 25.
Okay, great. So I think we are properly focused. And again, ASAP is accelerated support to local partners, which is many of you are. Okay, so we're going to be focusing pretty much today on the subpart E. Okay, so for any costs to be chargeable to the US government, it has to be reasonable, allocable, allowable, and supported. Okay, and the reasonableness concept is, again, we'll be going over it in the slides in the future here, but it's called the prudent person rule. And the concept is there that we are all prudent with our own money, right? You just got your pay last week. You know where that's going. Rent, petrol, gas, you're going to go for food, you're going to have insurance, whatever, kids, school fees, clothes. That's our money. We're careful with it. And so the concept of reasonableness is be as careful with the US government money as you are with your own. And there's some other concepts there as well. Then allocable, it's hugely important that we are going to talk about allocability because as we're going to see in the next couple slides, it looks like the de minimis rate is going to go from 10 to 15%. Okay, and some other things are changing, which means that from the US government's point of view, there's just a lot more risk. Okay, so when the uniform guidance changes, it came out December 23rd, 2013, and now we're about 10 years later. It was meant to be updated every 5 years significantly, and this is a mega change. Okay, so for all of you, and remember, this is when it hits, okay, and it's going to hit in the next couple of months, then you need to be aware because it could affect your what you need approvals for. It's going to affect maybe the amount of funding. I don't think you're going to get more funding. I don't know any missions sitting on piles of money to give more when the de minimis goes 10 to 15. But the bottom line is, there's a lot of changes, and absolutely, when you're preparing for your next proposal, you'll have to have these, well within your knowledge base. Okay, so allocability is really the ability to allocate certain types of costs, which would normally be indirect costs, because very few of you have a NICRA, a negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. Some of you do. Certainly in South Africa here, we have 3 organizations plus one more coming. that have NICRAs. Right to Care, Mothers to Mothers, and Broadreach are all were awarded a negotiated rate. Okay, but the rest of you are probably on the 10% de minimis. Okay, so there's going to be risks. The risks really are both to the U.S. government and to yourself. It's like, don't play with knives, right? You teach kids, don't play with fire, don't play with knives, don't play in the street. You can get hurt. Okay, well, if you don't understand these rules, you can get hurt. So we'll talk about allocability quite significantly. And then, of course, allowable. For any cost to be allowable, it has to be reasonable, allocable, supported, and not specifically allowed. There's only 56 specific cost principles that are allowable or not. But of course, there's hundreds of types of costs that you might incur. Okay, and supported means documented. I mean, the auditor, we're auditors, we train auditors. And the whole point about auditing is, regardless of, I see the machine, but I didn't see how you bought it. It doesn't exist. I know it's sitting there. I know it's making noise, like our generator out here making noise during our load shedding or blackout period. But, if you can't document it for the auditors, how you bought it, competition, so show me some vouchers, it doesn't exist. No timesheets, the guy didn't exist. Those sort of things. So we can talk about all these. Okay, so here are, I hope you may not be able to see this. Let me just see if I can blow this up a little bit. I'll blow it up as much as I can. Okay, you'll be able to get these slides from Melissa and the great ASAP team. So let me just go over a couple of these, and they're not in any particular order per se, but pretty much we went through the red line version of the uniform guidance. So it happened about a year ago, not quite a year ago. It was time to update the guidance, the UG. For us, it's 2 CFR 200. Okay, if you go to www.ecfr, Electronic Code of Federal Regulations.gov, and you click on the number 2, that's part 2, and then you go to 2, it's Code of Federal Regulations, and you go to the 200, and that's the source of all our rules. Okay, now basically they put out a red line version about December. And in there, it's 501 pages of a lot of the changes that are going to take place. Okay, but it was already the open period for making comments is closed. It was closed on December 5th. And so they're deliberating over these. But you can be pretty certain that very few people are going to be able to sway the Office of Management and Budget to change these probable changes. Okay, so the first one is the single audit threshold, which is now 750, is going to go to $1 million. Okay, and that's big. That's going to affect auditors, but it's going to affect especially primes with subs, because there's a lot of funding that is probably currently under 750. Well, now it's going to jump to $1 million. Okay, that to me that puts the prime at greater risk, and we don't really have a lot of time to talk about audits, but if we're auditing a prime audit recipient. Okay, I'm not going to put sustainability solutions on my opinion for you unless I'm sure that you have managed it correctly. Okay, so I'm not going to rely on the Deloitte or KPMG or EY or PwC. Right, I'm going to have to look myself. I'm not auditing that sub, but I'm auditing if you correctly manage the sub. Okay, so there's greater risks there. Almost all of these 20, 25, 26 are greater risks. Now you're saying, well, why did they do this? Remember, less than 0.5% of the total federal budget is spent overseas. Okay, so when they change the uniform guidance, it's for the $4 or $5 trillion that's spent in the states. It's not for you. It's not for me, right? That's why they made the changes. And so all these changes are to make the administrator's job in the states easier, right? So there'll be fewer audits, go from 750 to $1 million. Okay, so that's easy for them, but overseas here, this will have greater impacts than it's going to have in the States. Okay, equipment and supplies threshold goes from 5 to 10,000. Now remember, if you set your threshold lower, then obviously we use your threshold, but that is going to have an effect as well. Okay, a certain number of costs, if you've been on the cost principles before, but we'll see this now again at 407, 2 CFR 200, 407. There used to be 26 items that needed specific prior approval. Okay, we're going to see here, and as I go through the slides, 10 of those have disappeared from requiring prior approval. And some of them to me are quite important, like what is it? Entertainment, participant support costs. How can they remove some of these, what I think are quite important? And what this is going to mean is when you do your proposal, and this sort of quick slide here, this means, look, here's your technical proposal. It's technical, financial. when you do your proposal, you're going to need to be quite clear on exactly what you're asking for and how it's going to be used. Okay, almost like we call activity-based costing. You say, great, I'm going to have a sub office out in the Felt or out in a rural area, and I'm going to have X number of people there, and we're going to need X vehicles, and make it quite clear. Okay, just one other thing. Okay, if you are in a PEPFAR country or you work with USAID and CDC, realize that sometimes, and I was training CDC in Pretoria over the last 2 days, so certainly I couldn't get more fresh with that knowledge, but I've seen it before in a number of countries where the US government says, why is USAID and CDC projects happening in all over the country? So they say, okay, let's split it up. Whatever, CDC, you take the north, USAID takes the south, or CDC takes the east and west or whatever. And so they might say to you literally on a Thursday, oh, by the way, some other NGO is going to take over your activities because you're in the South and you're going to take over an activity from someone else, somewhere else. So what I'm saying is when you do your budget, please prepare it so you can tear it apart if you had to. So do it by segments. Right. So we're doing, whatever we're doing. I think many of you are probably health. So you're saying, great. So we're doing care and testing or care and treatment, and someone else is doing testing. So break your budget apart, or at least have it in components. So God forbid you have to break it up, you can easily. Okay, so this 3 continue to provide federal agencies, and USAID is probably the biggest taker advantage of this. They have discretion in applying subparts A through E of the notice for foreign organizations. USAID has the ability to determine what are they going. Let me just go back here because I want to take you back a slide. Okay, so here we have subpart C, that's pre-federal award, which means what CDC and USAID and state have to do before they give you money. Then D is the post-federal award. That's more than what we have to do. Okay. Now, what you'll learn next week in the same course, in a course another week from now, is USAID has taken advantage of what I just explained, and they've created what I call the light version of the standard provisions, and that's what's going to be the attachment in your award, right? And that is basically the standard provisions. It's mandatory standard provision ADS 303 MAB if you're getting detailed. But a lot of this is in ASAP's library or storage anyways. Okay, but the bottom line is they have the ability. It said A through E. Okay, it doesn't say F, right? Why? Because F does not apply to foreign organizations. F is what does apply is the yellow. Okay, that's the yellow book here. But it's still in paper if you ever want it. Okay, you can get it from the GAO. Not useful really unless you're an auditor, but the bottom line is you'll be having a yellow book audit. Now that's the foundation for the basis for subpart F, but they're not the same. Okay, a single audit uses the yellow book concepts and methodology, but it's greater than a yellow book audit. So overseas, your auditors will know how to provide you a yellow book audit. So people are going to say, oh, I have an A133 audit. No, you don't. But we auditors know enough to give you exactly what you need. Okay, so the whole point here is that's what I'm saying. Agencies have discretion to modify some of these things. Now, Melissa, just please put your hand up, everyone. If any of you also get money from Health and Human Services, specifically CDC. Any of you, probably PEPFAR partners, might get money also from Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Okay, and I'll explain why that's sort of important right now. I imagine there'll be 15, 20 people getting, at least people who are responding are getting those sort of numbers. Anything, Melissa?
Yep, you're correct, around 15.
Okay. Okay, so if we extrapolate, that's probably about 40 or 50 because many people aren't responding. But the reason that's important because USAID is always or should have been giving you the 10% sort of overhead de minimis, whereas CDC has been restricted to 8%. Okay, and I was explaining to him yesterday in Pretoria, look, when your USAID de minimis goes from 10 to 15, those CDC funds are going to look awful. We'll put it this way: USAID funds are going to look much more promising because of the greater overhead allowance. Okay, so that's why some of these changes are quite important to understand. Okay, what do we have here? Changed MTDC, now modified the total direct cost. That's the basis upon which you get your 10% or probably now 15% de minimis. Okay, well, the exclusion there for subawards used to be $25,000. That's jumping to 50. Okay, so right now, if you have subs, you get 10% on top of the first $25,000, meaning you get 2,500 of overhead for each sub. You max out. It goes to 15 and 50. Now you're getting $7,500, right? So you're going to have more overhead effectively for each of your subs. Okay, that's not huge money, but the difference between 2,500 and 7,500, which is 5,000, could be significant. Okay, this one's a bit gray area. Clarify that the primes and subs have to disclose credible evidence of a criminal law. I mean, we've talked about this in many of the ASAP seminars, talking about fraud. I think ASAP has some other fraud seminars. I know the Inspector General, we've got great Inspector General staff here in Victoria. I was meeting with them yesterday as well. The USAID building's the same place as the CDC. We've got some great inspectors, and we normally invite them to participate in our longer courses, the one starting in March. Okay, so we have them in to talk about an hour or so on fraud management, conflict of interest, things like that. Okay, but the whole point here is what's credible evidence of essentially fraud. And so my belief is, great, you hear something going on in your organization, you think, all right, we're gonna have to investigate. When you do that initial investigation and you think there could be something there, to me, that's credible evidence. Okay, and what you'll learn next week under the standard provisions is that if you're at the prime level, okay, when you believe there's fraud, you have to report it to your AO and the IG in Washington, the Office of Inspector General in Washington. At the sub level, if there's fraud, you have to report it to the prime who gave it to you and the IG in Washington. Okay, one of the worst things you can do is try to, you have a fraud and you're hiding it. You're saying maybe we can recover, maybe it's going to go away. Look, if there's fraud, there's fraud. It happens all the time, and just report it. The U.S. government's going to have some questions for you. What happened? What did you do to prevent it? What did you do with the guy who committed the fraud? How did you change your policies and so forth? Okay, but everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to get terminated. You're not going to get. You're unlikely to be terminated because fraud happens all the time. It's not good, but of course you can try to prevent it. And we have a whole course on internal controls. Melissa, I don't think we have that one coming up here. The green book, right? Green book, internal control framework. That's this one here. You won't be able to see it because it is green, and I've got a green screen, but trust me, it is a green cover. Okay. Entitle recipients to unexpected funds or expected funds under a fixed amount award. So a fixed amount award, which we'll talk about again next week, is like a baby sub award. Except the fixed amount sub-award is basically, one, it's not auditable. Two, and one of the rules you'll see just changing now is it's not limited. That's the number 7 here, right? The simplified acquisition threshold was for fixed amount sub-awards. That's at 200.333. Okay, so now there's no limit on your fixed amount sub-awards. So the whole point here, I will say in your digital pack, but we normally issue a digital pack with many dozens of documents. In there, we have a subfolder for USAID and a fixed amount subawards. Okay, you can all get that. You can just go to the USAID site, usaid.gov, download ADS 303, the basic 303. And it's there under 303.3.25. It's all the information you need on fixed amount subawards. Okay, great thing to have. If what you're doing is be able to break it up into milestones and deliverables, then that could be or should be your choice. Okay, let's carry on. Interest-bearing accounts for most of us overseas. This is not too new. We have Islamic banking or something like that. So it just gives more clarity on when you are not required to have a separate bank account. Okay, but generally you are, not a separate bank account, an interest-bearing account. Okay, USAID no longer requires you to have a separate account, but I highly recommend it. For many reasons. It enables you to reconcile your fund accountability statement or CFA to a bank balance. And that's what the Inspector General and the missions want. You say, great, we got $3 million this year and we spent 2.9 million. So therefore I've got a balance of 100,000. It's natural to say, okay, well, show me that it exists. And if you don't have a separate bank account, if you commingle your funds, which is allowed, but to me, just trust me, I've learned that, what does it cost? An extra $30, $40 a year or more? Doesn't matter. That's an allowable cost to your project. It'll make your life so much easier, especially when you have to recover interest. Okay, program income for certain types of closeout costs. Closeout, if I have anything to share with our friends that our finance team putting together the guidance, it's to provide more information on closeout. What's required, what's not. We have a whole module on closeout. Again, Melissa, I'm not sure if that's coming up in the next couple of months, but it's quite important that you plan for your closeout and you know exactly what you're going to do 6 months in advance. Get approvals for all the costs you're going to incur in the final 6 months. And then any of the up to 120 days after that closeout period, that's the real gray area. Because basically the project is finished, right? The technical project is finished, but you're going to carry on with your audit and closing out the project and paying taxes and doing reports, right? All those activities, I'll say there's differences of opinion between AOs and missions even on how to treat closeout costs. So my main suggestion to you on this is understand exactly what your AO, agreement officer, thinks about closeout, because he or she may have some different viewpoints from you. And even in the audit guidelines, that's the ADS 591 MAA in there, and you can get all these on the USAID website. Okay, and there are the audit guidelines. Even there, for us auditors, there's not that much information. So the whole point there is, protecting you from getting caught out or having having costs that you thought were going to be acceptable rejected. Okay, here we go. Clarif 10. Clarify recipients don't need approval of individual subrecipients, but only when making subawards of programmatic activities. So you're basically giving some of the program to a sub, and they weren't proposed in the original application. And I don't think this is really too different. That's at 308, and that's about chopping and changing your program. Okay, I think it's always good to work with your AO and your AOR, agreement officer's representative, when you're changing teams. Could be for legitimate reasons. Okay, but I still suggest, even if you don't necessarily need prior approval anymore, I still suggest getting it, keeping your AO and AOR informed. Okay, as we said here, eliminate prior approvals for these things: real property, get serious, direct costs, that's important, entertainment, risky, exchange rates. Oh, we'll have another thing on that. Memberships, these are all changing, and selling and marketing and taxes, right? You don't need prior approval. Well, that worries me. If I'm a U.S. government employee and my guys, my partners, most of you are not getting our approvals anymore, then there's a risk. Okay, just one suggestion. You're on this webinar, you're learning the rules. You can't assume that every U.S. government employee knows the rules. And so for the last X number of years, last 10 years, they had to approve entertainment costs. Okay, so on some day, probably in March or April, the rule is going to change. And in theory, on that day, the rule changes. Then the rule changes, then how you have to do it changes. But it's not gonna sink into all of them. So they're gonna say, but you need prior approval. Okay, and of course you don't bite the hand that feeds you, but you really would want to say, well, look, the rule changed on whatever, April 13th. And but what I'm saying is, if they still want you to give them prior approval, I wouldn't disagree. Slowly, everyone will learn the new rules. Okay, this one, number 12, is pretty important because historically, uniform guidance was designed to be uniform. That's why it's called uniform guidance. But unfortunately, a number of agencies have not played ball. They have not sort of changed their policies and procedures or how they operate to make the document, to make uniform guidance uniform. So now I think the OMB is getting a bit angry. Okay, and just one example of this is that currently Health and Human Services and Center for Disease Control doesn't recognize NICRAs issued to non-US government organizations. Okay, they're saying, no, direct cost everything, which makes it a huge headache. Okay, so now OMB says, look, no, you don't have to complain to, in this case, CDC, because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. You complain to the OMB. So you effectively go above the agency to say, look, we're a partner, the donor effectively is not doing what they're supposed to do. Please deal with it. Okay, so I think what we're going to see here now is for the few of you, but many more of you are starting to get NICRAs. A couple of missions have started looking into issuing NICRAs. So that could be, some of you may wish to do that. Okay, the first thing you do before you consider that is ask the mission, is someone in the mission, is some AO willing to issue us a NICRA? Okay, but otherwise, if the de minimis goes to 15%, I don't know. I think most of you, if it were me, even if my true rate was 16 or 17%, I'd stick with the 15% de minimis. Okay, it's not auditable. And as you're going to see, you don't have to justify what you're using that 15% for. I mean, you still have to do what I'd call a cost policy statement, meaning you have to be able to explain how you direct or indirect costs, but 15% de minimis is going to be quite beneficial to most of you. Okay, pass-through entities must accept. Well, that's what it says here. They're clarifying. Now, remember, uniform guidance and plans, it's for all 26 agencies. Clarify that the primes here must accept federally negotiated indirect cost rates for subs. So if a sub, so let's say it's a US-based organization, FHI, whatever let's say their NICRA is 19%. Okay, and you're a local, you're an African or an Asian or a European prime, but you don't have a NICRA yourself. You get the 10% right now. And then all of a sudden your proposal, you've got someone like an FHI showing up with a 19% overhead rate, you have to accept it. Okay, you must accept because they've earned the right to that overhead rate. They've proven already that it works. And in theory, it's updated every year. But the bottom line is that's what the rule says. Primes must accept NICRAs of your subs. Okay, 14, we put in bold there. De minimis probably going to go to 15%. Okay, requires subs to certify. This is huge, huge, huge. If you're a subrecipient or even a prime, right? But if you're a sub, you have to certify that what the invoice effectively that you're passing up to the prime is accurate. And I think this is going to ring in the False Claims Act. Okay, the False Claims Act says basically if you willingly know that a timesheet or anything, if the submission has incorrect costs and you know it, that's a false claim. Okay, you can go to jail for that. Now, the U.S. government generally doesn't put non-U.S. people in jail, but it's not a good thing. Okay, and so they would work with your local police if they knew it was a false claim, which is a fraud, effectively. Okay, but this certification is something new. Okay, you never had to do that before. And so just, watch that space because what this is going to mean, and our team's already getting ready, I would expect a lot of organizations are going to want stronger internal controls. Okay, so if you don't have an internal audit function in-house, outsource it to one of the firms in your country. Okay, there's a number of firms in each of your countries that's perfectly competent. We train auditors about every other month. And last time we had 19 auditors from 13 countries, and 90% of them said they would be able to help clients like you outsource your internal audit, meaning helping you do a risk assessment, helping you, do an internal control framework and stuff like that. Doesn't have to be expensive, but if I'm the finance guy and I'm certifying that, what I'm passing up to my prime is correct, I would want to be able to sleep at night. Okay, prior approval for exchange rates, let's not worry about that. Prior approval for participant support costs, selling and marketing. I mean, I did highlight that to you earlier, and we are going to see some of these. Notice these are in the 400 section, and that's the cost principles, what we're talking about today. Closeout costs on termination. Again, closeout, fuzzy area. Talk to your AO specifically. Admin costs, that's fine. Compliance testing, let's not worry about that. Okay, and direct cost method, joint costs for IT. Well, that's logical, right? You got to recover all your costs, and so under the direct cost method, it just says there's a couple different ways to allocate your cost. Either like rent. So rent, for example, you know how to allocate rent. It's based on square meters or square footage, right? So great. Our building is 200 square meters. The downstairs is 100, upstairs is 100, and the USAID project's on the ground floor. And the global fund is upstairs. When the invoice comes in, they pay half and we pay half, right? So there's many different types of factors, it's called, to allocate indirect costs. Okay, but when it happens so IT to me would be based on headcount. HR would be allocated based on headcount. Finance could be allocated based on funds spent or many different things like that. Okay, so all they're saying is that's the direct cost allocation method for IT. And again, anyone who doesn't have a NICRA or an overhead rate would be using that. Okay, that is, I think that is, yeah, okay. So I do have some time for some questions right now. Melissa, do we have, maybe you could read them out to the audience. So if you'd be putting them in the Q&A if you have a question now.
We have one question, and everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A box. This question says, will these changes apply to existing awards or only new awards?
Okay, well, that's a good question. That's undetermined right now. But I would think when it comes to the cost principles, okay, now the cost principles are, when I talked about the light version, right, of when USAID creates the standard provision attachments, standard and required as applicable provisions, those are adjustments to the uniform guidance. Okay, but no one has ever made, other than CDC regarding the 10% de minimis, no other agencies have made changes to the cost principles. So I think the theory would be, and I'm waiting to hear back from some global gurus, but and they don't know either. But we're trying to figure out, is this going to be, put it this way, when it changes, it's either going to change immediately or when your agreement officer next amends your award, and that's normally when you get additional funding. Okay, so I would be prepared for these changes coming in, literally in a couple months. Okay, good question. Other questions?
This question is similar, but are they changes, adjustment, or sorry, I'm trying to understand this question, but it says, are these changes effective to projects already running and adjustments being made to the project? I would imagine it, like you just mentioned, Doug, something about when your budget or funding changes, perhaps.
Yeah, well, we don't know. Okay, but the whole point is, and we saw this when the de minimis was first announced. When it went from nothing to 10%. In theory, you had the right to it, but 95% of the mission said you had a right to it, but we don't have any more money. And I think that's going to happen here, right? I mean, 10 to 15% is significant, and that's really the only. When I say the only thing that has significant financial impact is coming up with an extra, 5% for your indirect costs. But yeah, it's still be determined. I would think some of them will apply when your AO amends your award. And that's when remember, these standard provisions are going to change. Because when the uniform guidance changes, the FMO team under our CFO, Reggie in Washington, he and his team, great people, they're going to have to look at these new guides. And I'm sure they're looking at them already. Okay. But these things don't come out overnight. They'll have to wait for the final version to come out and then adjust as they did in the first place, the standard provisions. Very good question.
The next question is, do you know when the date that the de minimis will be revised?
No, but I think it's, I mean, they put out the Q&A, or put it this, the comment section, it was in October. And then the final deadline was December 5th. We commented on some things because it said the de minimis could be up to 15%. We just said it's a disaster. I mean, if it's up to, then it's going to be subject to negotiations, and you may as well have a night. Okay, but the bottom line is, they were pretty sure what they were putting out in October, and of course, they give people time to comment, but it's already been effectively 2 months, so I would expect it in March or April. That's to be confirmed. Okay. Next question.
Excellent. The next question is, how does the single audit threshold apply for a financial year already ended, but currently in the audit process?
Yeah, it won't matter. It's going to be the client's fiscal year. So if you're, right now it's 750 for non-US organizations, and when it goes to $1 million, I cannot imagine it goes to $1 million retroactively. No, so I think the current fiscal year. Now, let's say maybe for ease of calendars that people understand, we're in February. Say you're a January, December party, and this thing probably will change in the current fiscal year. I think what that would mean is that at the end of your next audit period, December of 2024, it would be $1 million. That's how I would do it. I don't think they're going to prorate the budgets. That would be awful difficult for you IPs and for us auditors. So I think it's going to be, it won't be retroactive. Over.
Great. The next question says, would you be penalized for ignoring your institution's ICR and follow the de minimis?
Yeah, the concept, good question. The concept is that if you have a NICRA or indirect cost rate, you're supposed to use it. And it's a two-sided coin. You know, the concept is USAID and primes can't force you to take less. Okay, meaning if your NICRA is 15, they can't say no, use the de minimis. That's not allowed. I think the flip side here is if you truly are 14% and it's audited and the 15% de minimis comes in, I can't imagine you could opt for the de minimis. Okay, I'd have to think more about that, but I don't think it works that way. Okay, that's why that's why you're audited. That's why you get the NICRA. You got it in the first place. Okay. Next, thank you.
Yep. Does the allowance/inclusion for charging administrative costs closeout activities on the federal award also apply to subrecipients?
Absolutely, yeah. Everything, the cost principles, everything. Okay, we're in the 400 section, right? That applies to everyone, primes, subs, everyone other than for-profit entities. Yeah, it'll change for both primes and subs. Yep.
Great. Are the indirect costs of subrecipients above 15% auditable by USAID?
Well, okay, if they have the de minimis is not audited. Okay, very clear. On December 26th, they made it crystal clear, and I've got 6 or 7 documents by COFAR, by many people, clarifying that de minimis is not auditable. That's why it's de minimis. That's why they put it out there. So it's easy to deal with. And most organizations are, if they have a NICRA, it's way higher than that. Okay. The average for NGOs in the States with the NICRA, with the MTDC base is 22.9%. Okay, so that's a far cry from the 10. Now you get closer to the 15, well, all bets are off. But yeah, no, it's not auditable. And so, sorry, let me just, that question again, 1 second. So, hopefully I answered that one. If you delete it, that's fine. Yeah, but that won't be auditable. So if it was over 15%, well, so the whole point again in this course is about cost principles. We did direct costing before, and we'll do it again in our open course. But the bottom line is IPs, you should be direct costing everything you can direct cost. And we'll talk more about this at 405, cost principle 405, after we get past the Q&A. Okay, so I think you'll get the answer to that. All of you will get things answered when we get a few more slides deeper. Okay. Next question.
The next question is, what is the likely impact of the change in threshold for property definition from $5,000 to $10,000 in terms of fixed assets and inventory registers?
Okay, good question. So, it's at 5 now, but to be honest, most organizations who we advise or audit, they set your own threshold for capitalization, right? So I don't think many organizations are going to change their policies to make it higher, right? Making it higher means you have less control. So I think a lot of organizations have it at $500 or $1,000 or $2,000, but most NGOs now aren't using the $5,000 threshold. And so the rule for the U.S. government is if you capitalize your own assets at a lower threshold, meaning you keep track inventory and stuff like that, you must do the same thing for the U.S. government assets. So you're not going to have, oh, here's our local inventory where we keep track of computers and furniture, and then for all the U.S. government stuff, we're going to raise it to 10,000. It doesn't work that way. You're going to have the same threshold. So realistically, now what this will affect, it's going to affect the big guys, the guys in the States, the US-based guys who currently do use 5,000. Because the whole point, 5,000, it's not much over 5,000, maybe vehicles and generators and big stuff. When they move that to 10, again, there's even going to be fewer items that are going to be on the list, and they'll take advantage of it. They will certainly raise it to 10,000 because it's less accountability. Let's just say it's less paperwork. Okay, so they will do it. I don't think many of the folks overseas will be taking advantage of that. Good question.
Excellent. The next question is, would local country restriction like ambassadors memos restricting certain costs or imposing restrictions supersede these new guidances?
Yeah, depending on your country, I think it could, because that would be something that your agreement officer would put into your specific award. Now, agreement officers, so I mean, the whole point about the uniform guidance is meant to be uniform. Okay, but they recognize that there are certain things happening in certain countries, maybe taxes or withholdings, or can't do certain things that would be specific. So the agreement officer would be doing that probably under some pretty strict guidance. So that's why we say rule number one: read your award. Okay, if something changed, the ambassador's note or these memos would, or the presidential memos, the executive orders, like the one about not using Huawei equipment, things like that. Although we got a waiver until 2028 on that, called the 889 principle. We may see that in the cost. We'll see it later. But the whole point is, let's assume if there's something specific, that they will put that in your award. Read your award, and if you disagree with it or it's going to harm you, talk to your program people, your AO, and say, look, you're asking us to do this. Here's the impact it's going to have. But chances are probably yes. If there's something the ambassador puts in, it probably will stick and take precedence.
Great. We have a couple questions here on communication surrounding these changes. Should we expect to get other formal documentation regarding these changes, and where would be the best place to look for communications on this?
Okay. I think you'd go to the OMB website, Office of Management and Budget. But when this hits, it's going to be pretty significant. So, I mean, if you haven't heard about it now yet, okay, that's fine. I mean, but it's certainly coming. But when it hits, the mission is going to be very aware of it, and and the chances are you're probably not going to change too much in your current operations until your award changes. But to me, the important point is being aware for your next set of proposals, your next year's budgets. I mean, you can already start thinking, if the de minimis goes to 15, that's going to have some huge implications. Okay, to me, but that's a risk, but that's great, more money. But, and write that term down, cost policy statement. And that's where and that guidance on how to do a cost policy statement is in the USAID and Department of Labor indirect cost guidelines. Okay, you can get the USAID version on usaid.gov. Just search for indirect costs, and up pops the guidelines, and that'll tell you what the cost policy statement means. Okay, maybe you hold some of these until we get another chance, because I think we are, how long are we into this now? We are in for a half hour, correct?
We've been on for an hour.
An hour. Okay, well, let's continue on, and let's jump through. Let's just go here. Let's move this around. Okay, thanks for those. Let's just jump then into the what we're going to talk about, some more specific cost principle stuff. Okay, so the concept is that, as I said, there's only 56 specific items listed as specifically allowed or unallowed. But as I said, here's a typical health program, maybe a PEPFAR program. A lot of these things you're going to have. You're going to have travel. You're going to have reagents and supplies and condoms and test kits. There's not specific cost principles for all of those. So the overarching concept, and again, this is a Bob Strauss concept, is any cost might be allowable if it's reasonable, allocable, and supported, and not specifically disallowed. Okay, because there's a lot of gray areas, and we're going to see under 407, the U.S. government specifically, and in your standard provision number 1, USAID partners, standard provision number 1 tells you, the second paragraph says, if you're not sure, ask. Okay, get approval from the AO, and not that it needs prior approval, but it's a gray area. And what we recommend is when you're doing your proposal, especially your cost proposal, right? You add a column there, and you highlight specifically for each type of cost. You highlight this cost is specifically allowable in the cost principles, or it's with prior approval, or it's not mentioned. And so then by definition, in this proposal, and I'm not going to go back to those changes coming up, but the concept is that if you put it specifically in your award, okay, and they didn't disallow it, that cost probably will be allowable. Okay, so the more specific and detailed you are in your cost proposal, that'll help you. Likewise, when we auditors want to understand, what was in your mind when you proposed for this thing, we'll ask for your proposal. Okay, because that gives us an indication of that you did ask for something specifically. Because remember, when we're auditing you, we don't go to USAID. Rarely would we ever go to USAID and say, did you guys seek prior approval for this? I mean, if we're auditing you, we're going to ask you, did you seek prior approval for this? Great, show me. Okay, but if it was in one of these gray areas where it's not defined, and you show me, look, we put in the budget here. We said we got 100 community care workers into our technical proposal, and each of them needs $10 worth of data every month. We say, all right, that seems reasonable. Okay, allocable. Well, we're only using the data for US project. Okay, it's allocable. Supported. Yeah, I can see that you bought it, and I can see the receipts, or it hit your bank account. So there, it's reasonable, it's allocable, it's supported, and it's not specifically disallowed. So to me, we would not err on the side, but we would probably agree that wouldn't necessarily be a question cost. Okay. Okay, so the cost principles apply to all of us. Now remember, for-profit entities have the federal acquisition regulations. That's not us. It's a similar body, a little bit more strict, but most of us are not for profits, and therefore we. So if you lose me for a minute, do you still have me, Melissa? Hopefully you have me. Hopefully
Yeah, we have
me.
you, Doug.
Cool.
We can hear you.
Different sections of the cost principles. And we're going to briefly go over the 402 through 411, or 4 through 407. That's what applies to us. We'll talk about direct versus indirect costs. And then what we're not going to cover is state and local government and American indigenous people. That's not applying to most of us. Some of you may be institutions of higher education. We're not going to go there. But if you are in university or something like that, you might want to look a little bit more closely there. What that covers conceptually is basically timekeeping for your educator staff. Maybe you got a professor and he or she's going to take a sabbatical and they're still charging time for the project. Can they also work basically a second job? That's what's covered under that. But that's not for most of us. What we're going to spend time on is this 420 through 476. As I said, there's 66 items. I think it's 66, but there are 56 items that are specifically allowed or disallowed. Okay, now when the cost principles talk about costs being direct and indirect, it assumes, if you remember, 99% of these costs are spent in the States. So it assumes when they say total cost of award is the allowable direct costs and the allocable indirect costs, those indirect costs are with a NICRA. Okay, when they use indirect, they mean you've got an indirect rate or you're direct costing everything. Okay, minus any credits, refunds, rebates, discounts, cashback cards, all that goes straight back to the project, not to you. Okay, so this slide's a bit busy, but it's just more of a summary of how I explain things to you. So allowability is, as we said, first it has to be reasonable and allocable. And then these costs have to conform to limitations in the cost principles. Now remember, as I said, 99.x% of the funds are spent in the States. So there might be unique things that you say, how does this apply to me? Maybe a state or local government rule or something that's in the States. Some contractors have to get, over $3,000, need to have some sort of safety thing. That doesn't apply to most of us overseas. So there is stuff in there that isn't going to apply to you. So just don't get put off if you don't understand it. Okay, then they want to see consistency, that your policies and procedures for charging the US government are not different for charging either your own projects or some other donor, EU, Global Fund, Gates Foundation, right? Ford Foundation. All of those are, they have policies and procedures, but the bottom line here is the US government doesn't want you, and USAID doesn't want you to take advantage of the US government. So they're going to say, this basically comes in travel. I think that the most fundamental example of this is maybe when before you got US government money, or currently, you say, oh, when it's our project and we're going to go to a different state or city or province, and our guys are traveling on our own money, they get $40 a day for meals and food, and they can stay in a $60 hotel. So we give them a $100 allowance. Okay, and then when we say, but when it's US aid projects, we're going to use their per diems. The state, if USAID, www.state.gov, search on foreign per diems, and there you're going to see, it's $130 for a hotel and $80 for food. Oh, well, that's a much higher sort of allowance, so let's use the US government. No, you can't, right? If it's good enough for your own people and you're willing to do travel for other donors, then the US government gets that, that more frugal or reasonable rate. Okay, so these are the sort of things that are covered under allowability. You want consistent treatment with your direct or indirect costs. That's a bit beyond this course, but it's called like usage. So a cost should be in any situation, any like situation should either be treated direct or indirect. Okay, you can't have a cost that's, well, I'm charging it direct for these projects and indirect for these. That causes headaches. Okay, generally accepted accounting principles, cost share. Okay, let's not worry about this one down here is basically in red is what the new guide. I've already started updating the slides for what's likely to happen, but I leave them in red for now. Okay. 404, which is allocability. Sorry, 404 is reasonableness. I've got a cap on my screen here. 404 is reasonableness. So that's what we said. It's the prudent person rule. So a cost is reasonable if it doesn't exceed that which would be incurred by a prudent person at the time they made the decision to incur the cost. Okay, so that's the whole point. We're careful with our own money, and all these things just pretty much say, be careful with U.S. government money. Don't try to put things in your program you don't need, right? If you need a car, put in a car. If you need a four-wheel drive vehicle, put in a four-wheel drive vehicle. But if you don't need a boat, don't put in a boat. If you're working Lake Malawi or in Uganda on Lake Victoria or Madagascar or certain places that are on the water, you may need a boat. But if you don't try to charge it. I mean, boats aren't disallowed. They're not disallowable, but if you don't need it, don't charge it. And for everything else, likewise. If you don't need generators, don't put one in. Just the third bullet point is quite important: competition. U.S. government loves competition, and both in your USAID standard provisions and in the uniform guidance at 319, it specifically talks about competition. Okay, competition is a good thing. I would say for any implementing partner that gets an award, one of the first things you do is identify who are our potential providers and start doing preferred vendor lists. Okay, because again, it's good to have some competition, keeps vendors honest, and it's easier to do it up front. So you say, I know over the course of this 5-year project, we're going to need X number of computers or X vehicles or X toner cartridges, even if it's just an estimate to say, all right, well, let's go out and find out who could be our vendors for that. Okay, it's all the time we have for this presentation. Okay, and then allocability, again, probably the most important cost principle for many of us, because a lot of times you may think the mission is going to say, we don't pay for that. No, we don't pick up those costs. Well, the reality is they do. You just have to know how to ask for it. Okay, so the concept is that here's 405, and that's A, and then it's 1, 2, and 3. So it's 2 CFR 200, 405A, the first one, and 1, 2, and 3. So there's 3 types of costs. One is what we would call a direct cost. And that's no doubt. The cost is incurred specifically for that one award. So that could be if we've got 10,000 people on care and treatment, it's test kits, it's reagents, it's whatever else. If we're in agriculture, maybe it is fertilizer or seed or diesel for that specific tractors, that kind of stuff. Democracy and governance, maybe we are trying to reach out a certain audience, so we're going to broadcast it through Facebook or some kind of social media specifically for that award. Those are easy. Okay, the second one is benefits both my USAID award and other work of your entity. Okay, so here in our example, our theoretical example here, on the ground floor, I've got my USAID project, and upstairs I've got the Global Fund. Okay, so rent, I said rent, it comes in, that's a joint in common cost. Both of us use this space, so I'm going to allocate that cost on a reasonable method, right? For this type of things, there's a methodology that you can use to split it on a logical, calculable basis. So rent, HR based on headcount, IT based on headcount, finance based on maybe transactions or the amount of money spent. Procurement, how much did each project buy? Okay, how about, well, those are the examples. I'll just leave it at that, where it's logic. There's a logical reason to split out those costs. It's the third type that, unfortunately, sometimes USAID and other donors say, well, we don't pay for that. Or that's what your 10% de minimis is for. No, it's not. Okay, you'd go to, in your budget, you put in here, you put 45 or 2 CFR 200, 405 A3, or you drop down to D, right? 405D is called the direct cost allocation method. And it says there, if you must incur a cost to be in operation for the US government or for you to be in existence, the US government will pick up its fair share of them. Okay, now the problem here is there's no logical basis for your board, your lawyer, your internal control structure. Maybe you pay NGO fees every year just to exist. Okay, so those sort of things you have to be in business, but there's no logical basis for splitting it. Okay, and it specifically says that. It says we'll still pick up our fair share. So that, what I recommend normally is for organizations that say, all right, well, what's a basis that makes sense? Okay, well, why don't we look at the size of your project each year? So if I've got a $5 million project and the global fund's a $2 million project, I would allocate it, 5/7 and 2/7, things like that. And it should be consistently treated. So that's the allocation concept here. This is critically important. Don't get browbeaten by a prime, or I hate to say it, but the US government to say, we don't pay for that. You just have to know the rules to ask for it. That's why when you put it in your award, we're specifically invoking 405D, and this is how we're going to do it. You also explain your allocation methodology, right? And that's what the cost policy statement does as well, cost policy statement. Okay, everyone has to pick up their fair share of overheads, so you can't expect USAID to pick up, the EU's overheads or Ford Foundation or anyone else. So NGOs, be very careful to take, right now it's 10% de minimis, of course, but be very careful to take funding from an organization that's not willing to cover your overheads. Because there's no better way to go out of business than take funding to do stuff that you're not going to recover overheads on. Okay, each project stands alone. That final bullet point there, you have multiple projects. Each project stands alone, has its own budget versus actual, and that's what we auditors are going to audit. Okay, credits, rebates, discounts, refunds, cash back, buy two, get one free. All of those are some type of a credit. Those always go back to the project. Okay, I heard yesterday that, in the States, they have these they get these cash back cards. And even down here in South Africa, we've got you get bonus points for e-bucks, they're called, for, buying stuff online. Okay, that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the project. The only place ever the US government allowed people to keep their something like this is their frequent flyer miles and their loyalty points for hotels, like the Hilton or the Radisson or whatever else. The people get to keep that. Otherwise, it all goes back to the US government or your project. Okay, so this 500 to 407 is where USAID says in the cost principle, well, USAID doesn't. The cost principle says this, but USAID specifically puts this into your standard provision. Number 1B in the standard provision effectively says this. If you're not sure of whether a cost is going to be deemed reasonable or allocable or allowable, ask your agreement officer. Okay, and that's, to me, the last thing you IPs want is a gray area, because gray areas can only hurt you. Gray area, US government never gets hurt by a gray area, because they're the ones who are going to decide you get to keep the money or not. Okay, and although you may hire good auditors, they don't always know. Okay, and then once it gets into an audit report, it's awful hard to get out. Okay, so that's why I recommend when you're doing your proposal, right now is the time to put in that column, say, dear to be AO, future AO, it's not clear. We're asking you now during the proposal process to approve these as an acceptable cost. When I say acceptable, meaning allowable. Okay, at the proposal stage, it's not always easy to understand reasonableness or allocability, because you may have a building, but who moves into the building and how many projects work there could change over the course of the project. People's salaries could change. Very few missions, and there are a couple do it, I'm not going to mention it. A couple really study these closely, and we'll look at the salaries. Okay, but generally, missions don't necessarily look at salaries for reasonableness. If you put a salary budget in there, and they'll say salaries are an allowable cost, fine. But if the salary is unreasonable, the auditors are going to catch it, right? So they're going to rely on auditors. At least one line of defense will be the auditors. Okay, so all of these things currently require prior approval, and you'll notice, so they go in the order of the uniform guidance. So the 200 section is the pre-federal award. So you still need to get your grant, your subawards, and your fixed amount awards approved. Okay, cost sharing and matching, there's still going to be something there related to prior approval and so forth. But start going here, you'll notice these are the ones that I mentioned earlier that are going to fall away. It doesn't mean these costs are no longer allowable. It just means they're, or put it this way, it doesn't, but all it means is those items in red no longer need prior approval, will not need going forward. Okay, so there's a lot of those here. Membership, all these. This one's always been confusing. And remember, because that is part of MTDC, it's going to be even more confusing. Okay, you might have some questions on that. Okay, so how do we classify our costs as direct or indirect? Well, the most important thing the U.S. government says is there's no universal rule for how to do that, direct versus indirect. You know, everyone has the authority, everyone has an ability to determine yourself how you're going to charge a cost as direct or indirect. There's guidance, okay, but there's no hard and fast rule. You know, and conceptually, you would want to charge more things as direct if you can. Direct salaries, direct travel, direct supplies, direct equipment, okay? Because direct costs, you know, they're easy to justify. But indirect costs, people start to say, oh my God, these guys have so much overhead. Do we really want them or do we want someone else? Okay, let's go next. So let's move some things around here. Okay, so direct cost is 413. As I said earlier, direct costs can be specifically identified with a particular project, or it's called a final cost objective, meaning the final resting place for a cost is a final cost objective. Okay, there are intermediate cost objectives, what we call buckets, where you temporarily park expenses there, and later on they'll be poured or allocated over the final cost objectives of the project. That's where your IT and admin and HR goes into a bucket first. You accumulate that whole HR group, and then based on headcount, you'll apply those, you'll pour the bucket over the projects. I mean, indirect cost is a whole 4-hour course anyways, but I'm just exposing you to this now. Okay, so conceptually here, so okay, typical costs charged directly, people who work full-time on a project and their fringe benefits. Right, so the community care workers who are full-time, the nurses, the doctors, the M&E people working on a specific project are direct costs. Okay, so that was 413. Again, due to time, we can only go so deep, but yeah, I do have enough time, I have to. So what I suggest, right, everyone read the award. But when it comes time to a finance team or something, there are certain types of activities that take additional study and focus. And the one is travel, one is procurement, and equipment tends to go hand in hand with that. One certainly is timekeeping, and the most difficult one is direct and indirect costs. Okay, so those sort of 5 things take more focus, and you can't just listen to Doug or go read the regs and say, okay, I get it now. You're not going to get it. You need guys to spend days studying the travel policies. You've got Fly America, you got Open Skies rule, you got a lot of number of rules where you can get hurt, right? If you don't get this right, you know, those are payback costs. Okay, so direct costs and indirect costs are areas where someone truly has to focus. But there's good guidelines out there. Okay, so here, 414, this happens to be C. It says NICRAs have to be accepted by all agencies. Right now, CDC, as of this morning, isn't yet accepting it, but I think they're going to be forced to do it. And as I've said, this has come in there. So people who are unhappy that some agency, i.e. CDC, is not allowing you to use your NICRA, that would apply also to AMREF up in East Africa. Okay, if you fly, you know, the planes for health and human services projects, you don't complain to CDC to say you're not following your own rules. You go straight to the OMB now. Okay, so here is 414F, and this is where the 10% de minimis was invoked. And here is where I'm saying, so you should all either be direct costing your stuff, but I'd recommend that you all have at least a 10% de minimis. And if it goes to 15, then I think, if you have a 15% de minimis rate and you're direct costing as much as you can, you should have enough overhead, right? But you remember, you have to ask for it. And this is under this new localization program, USAID people specifically. And I mentioned this in Ghana when we were up there last year, right? New IPs don't know what they don't know. They don't know that a yellow book audit is going to be more expensive than a statutory. They don't know that they're going to need to have adequate internal controls. They don't know that the travel policy is onerous, and they're going to need extra people for this stuff. And so I think it's helpful for missions to have almost like a checklist. So those of you who work in the contracting office know that for-profits, it's called cost reasonableness, meaning is someone lowballing? They're just trying to win the project. Then later on, they're going to add costs. Well, the problem with implementing partners, new ones, it's the opposite. They don't know they're going to incur these costs, so they don't even know to ask. So I think on your side, you should have a checklist of 10 or 15 things that does it reasonable that these guys are going to be able to do it for this amount of money. Okay, so the bottom line here is this. So it's an election. So it says, in addition to the procedures outlined in E above, which is how to calculate a NICRA, any non-federal entity that doesn't currently have a NICRA may elect to charge the de minimis rate. That's probably going to go to 50. Okay, it can be used indefinitely. Now, this sentence, the next sentence was added sort of midway through, the uniform guidance about 3 or 4 years ago, but that's quite strong. No documentation is required to justify it. Now, this puts missions at unease. And I agree. I'm a taxpayer and I'm an auditor. Okay. So if I can't audit it, and they don't have to justify it, how do I know they're not double charging? Well, look at the next sentence. As described in 403, which is allowable costs, costs must be consistently charged either as direct or indirect, can't be double charged or inconsistently charged. So that's what you have a cost policy statement for. That'll take you 3 or 4 days for your finance team to get together and figure out, okay, how do we charge rent? Is that direct or indirect? It can't be both. It's going to be direct or indirect. Okay, how do we charge HR? How do we charge IT? How do we charge procurement? How do we charge accounting? How do we charge internal audit? How do we charge our board? Okay, all those things, you have a policy for that. And I don't blame missions for still asking, because they're already sensitive to the 10%. When it goes to 15, they'll be having kittens, right? They'll be getting worried, and I don't blame them. It's a lot of money. 15% of $10 million is another, $1.5 million for unknown overheads. Okay, so just prepare a cost policy statement. The guideline is in the indirect cost the guidelines for USAID, or I like the Department of Labor one as well. Okay, let's not worry about this. Okay, some questions. I think we have. I'm going to carry on past the time if anyone wants to stay. Certainly, Melissa, any thoughts on that? You don't have to kick people off, do you? I'm happy to stay to get through at least another 20 minutes or half hour. Are you happy to stay?
Until the bottom of the hour scheduled, and I'm happy to stay longer too.
Cool. Okay, because I'm getting a lot of good questions, and I did want to share. I did want to share as much knowledge as I can. Okay, what questions do we have, Melissa?
Great. There's a couple questions here about how these changes, raising the de minimis from 10 to 15%. What is the significance of this increase to both implementing partners and to donors? And similarly, how will these changes affect cost sharing agreements for the prime?
Okay, a good question. So it's not going to affect cost sharing agreements, but it will affect, I mean, the 15% means, as I just said to you, it's not audited, and it is, you don't need to document it. I mean, it's going to cause a lot of concerns, but that is the rule. I mean, in Ghana, we did a whole hour-and-a-half course on just the 10% de minimis. And you have to understand the logic behind it. It's not thinking us overseas, not at all. We weren't even a whisper of thought when it came to how's this going to apply to the foreign guys. Okay, they put it up in the States because U.S. government hires millions of people to do stuff for them. Plumbers, electricians, people who take care of old folks' homes and halfway houses and that kind of stuff. And they're doing God's work, but they're not financial people. And so you're the plumber from Milwaukee, and you say, Doug, go fix the plumbing in the school. It burst because the winter was like minus 30 degrees, and you're out there, and you send your bills in. You can't even spell indirect cost, right? You're the world's best plumber, but it's for those type of organizations that either can't or don't want to. That 10% de minimis is like a baby NICRA. It's a base because they know you're more likely, if you did the NICRA, you'd be 14, 15, 20%. So it's no heartbreak to give away 10% de minimis. Okay. So that concept in theory applies overseas. Okay. I can promise you, if you calculated your NICRA, I can't say what all the ones that people I know are, but I'm certainly they're not 10% and not under 10%. Okay. So if you did calculate your NICRA and you did direct costs, still a lot of things, you probably have 13, 14, 15%. Okay. So it's just to make it administratively easy. You don't have to audit it. You don't have to justify it because the US government in their greater wisdom knows you're unlikely to have less than 10%. So 15 is going to be a bigger number, admittedly. And that with the MTDC going up, with your subrecipients getting, you recover on 50,000 versus 25, it starts to add up. So as a concerned auditor and taxpayer, I say prepare a cost policy statement and share that with the US government. When they say, hey, how do I know you're not double charging? Okay, you can turn it on and say, be careful, don't bite the hand that feeds you. You could say, well, you're not allowed to ask me. And effectively, that's true, but they're still going to ask. And so say, well, we've done a cost policy statement. And so we understand what's direct and indirect. And although we're not supposed to document or have to justify it for you, you probably could. How do you treat your board costs? How do you treat your internal audit? How do you treat the salaries of your CEO, CFO, those people? Okay, you're probably not direct charging those. And the ultimate goal here, not goal, but the ultimate answer is what you're going to see now under 460. Bid and proposal costs are allowable only as indirect costs. Okay, now how many of you have just been handed $20, $30 million US government awards? No work. No one, right? You had to do proposals, you're spending days and nights and weekends, and teams are out there preparing CVs and costs, your cost proposal, your technical proposal, your 10-page technical, you're cutting out words, you're trying to squeeze the margins. That's a lot of time and work. All of that time and effort, the value of that is an allowable cost as an indirect cost. Okay, so that's the whole point. That's the main reason for timesheets, actually. It's to be able to determine whether your costs are direct or indirect. Again, I think very few of you actually charge that indirect time, the proposal time. You just eat it. Okay, and that's why timekeeping, I don't have time to get into timekeeping, but that's the importance of timekeeping is those hours actually, when you work more than 8 hours a day, the value of each hour decreases because you're sweating the assets. You don't get paid overtime, probably. Most people are salaried. Yet you're working 10 hours versus 8. Okay, well, each of those hours then is worth less. And so when you're charging the direct time, in theory, you shouldn't be charging, 1/8 of your rate for that day. Beyond this course, but all I'm saying is when it comes to indirect costs, a lot of these things come into play. And that's why if anyone asked me, I mean, we're obviously a contractor, so we don't have the de minimis. But if anyone said, Doug, if you're an NGO now, and how do you justify your 10%, even though you're not supposed to ask, and I don't have to tell you, I would say, well, all of our bid and proposal costs, that's what we're going to use that 10% for. And again, there's no rebuttal for that. Okay, how about one more question, Melissa, then we'll carry on.
Sure. There's a couple of questions about how to provide the de minimis rate to subrecipients or the relationship between your NICRA / the de minimis to a subrecipient.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I've opened it up to try to see. Someone's asking about UEI, unique entity identifier. Let's just clarify, right? A prime must be registered on SAM, System for Award Management, and have a UEI, unique identity identifier. It used to be called a DUNS number. Okay. Now, subs do not need to be registered on SAM, but they do need a UEI. So you'd have to register them for that. Okay. Subs need a UEI, not registered on SAM. Okay, regardless, a subrecipient is also going to get the 10 or 15% de minimis. Okay, okay, next question. So that was just a question on that. So what you sort of blended a number of questions, so I'll have you ask that again.
Sure. Yeah, you just answered one of those. Is the de minimis applicable to subrecipients? So the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
And then we have a couple of questions, sorry, that I'm blending together, but one of them is, can the de minimis also be used to assist costs that are incurred by the subs?
100%. Yeah, but you shouldn't. If you're a prime, you've got your own cost. The sub gets their own 10% or 15% de minimis. Remember, the sub's going to be giving you their own budget, right? If you're a prime, you have a consortium, and so you're going to put their costs in with your costs. But no, your 10. Matter of fact, remember, your 10 or 15% is pretty much excludes those subs, other than the current 25, then 50,000. So you're not going to get any overhead on your subs. If you've got subrecipients, you need a subrecipient management team. That's going to be a core position. Okay, that's not maybe not one of the 5 core positions, but you need a subrecipient manager or management team if you have multiple subs. There's huge risks on that, and we've done subaward management twice under this ASAP project, and that's one of our 5 critical concept courses, subrecipient management. If you're interested, that's going to be on March 12th or 13th, March 11th or 12th. Okay, you can reach out to us afterwards, but yeah, that is if you've got subs, you have potential headaches and potential risks. A prime with subs now, especially with all these new changes taking place, audits going to 1 million, equipment supplies going to 10,000. That's just screams risk. You may as well tattoo risk on your forehead, because you're going to need a risk manager on that. Okay, good question. I'll take one more, and then we're going to jump into try to get through some more stuff for now. And then I'll answer all these later, but just right now. Okay.
Sure. There's a question here. On a fixed award, can you please confirm that there will not be a limit with the removal of the $250 threshold, or are they being phased out?
Well, I think when the guidelines come in, now let's just see, fixed amount subawards, that is in the 300 section. So for us, that's at USAID 2 CFR 200, 333. For CDC, that's 353. No, I think when they change and remember, I can't say remember, just realize these limits for simplified acquisition threshold, which is 250, the micro purchase threshold 10,000, that's not in the uniform guidance. That's always included in the federal acquisition regulations, the FAR. So don't go looking for these thresholds in the uniform guidance, because they don't necessarily apply. But in terms of when it's going to apply, I think the minute they put in the uniform guidance, then it applies. So what does that mean? I mean, it doesn't change anything, because if you have existing fixed amount awards or subawards, they're fixed anyways. Okay, and remember, there's a fixed amount award is limited to 3 years, but you're not limited to how many you can have. And we were working with an organization up in Central Africa. They were a prime, and instead of having any subawards, they did everything with it. It used to be called a FOG, fixed obligation grant, but now it's a fixed amount award or a subaward. So they're beautiful mechanisms. And the reason the US government created them is for you to make your life easier. Okay, not auditable. Actually, the cost principles don't apply, funny enough. At the end of the day, it's almost like a baby contract. You say, I need every month some kind of survey. So you're going to have to send out X number of community workers. Give me a 30-page survey on something, on voter education, on a view on HIV/AIDS or gay lesbian rights or democracy. And you agree up front how much it's going to cost. And you say, great, every month we're going to bill you $10,000 for this report. Done. That's all the work. It's all done up front. Get the report, $10,000. You can do that up for up to 3 years. Okay, and then so for different types of things, you can have different types of fixed amount awards. So if you're a prime or going to be a prime, consider it. If you're currently a subrecipient and it's just too onerous for you, ask your prime whether they can swap you over to a fixed amount subaward. Okay, but the threshold, I think the minute it changes, so what's going to happen is, you're not going to all of a sudden take a current, I don't think you take a current fixed amount award or sub-award and change it. You just create a new one with no limit. But I think the 3-year limit is going to continue to apply. Okay, one more question. I did say done, but these are great questions.
Sure. Look, we'll stay on the subject of subawards. For subawards less than 25,000, do they still need a UEI?
That one is a good question, because the purpose for the UEI is to enable the funding to be included into the FFRS, which is the system for transparency, and that's for like foreignassistance.gov, USAIDspending.gov. I don't have a direct answer for that one. Subs less than 25, they still need a UEI. I can't tell you that, because I mean, the reason for all those things. So yeah, I think does someone have an answer there? Or someone else anyone from USAID want to weigh in? Okay, the answer to that one, I would have to go way deeper into the regs, but I think I know some recipients, but I can't tell you for certain that I wouldn't bet my life on that one. Okay. Logically, I know why we do keep track of them, and it's for any prime must. Every time a prime obligates more than $25,000, I think it's 30,000 now, to a sub-awardee, you have to enter that into this FFRS, the system that keeps track of where the money goes. Okay, so given that you're not, if you never are going to obligate more than $25,000, there's no reason, but there's no requirement to enter that anywhere. So that would be the reason I would think maybe that it doesn't apply. Okay, why don't we save the questions, and then let me try to answer them if I get through all these slide pack. Okay, if everyone's happy, do me a favor, send me a thumbs up emoji if you want this to continue. It's always good to get some feedback sometimes. Okay, let's go to. So we're in these selected items of cost. There they come. Thank you for the emojis. So we're into the detailed selected items of cost. Okay. Now, what's very interesting, look what I put in bold here, the federal award governance. Now, elsewhere in the uniform guidance, it says the uniform guidance governs. Okay, so this is effectively a conflict. So what this says to me, and I say this to every auditor who we train, right? Audit the award. Okay, the agreement officer and his or her team, they created this, they crafted the award for that client, right? So if they put it in there, do what the agreement officer said. Okay, likewise, if we're auditing a sub, we have to abide by what was in the award. And so I don't know if we have any auditors on this. Hopefully we do. But regardless, if you're a subrecipient, your prime may not have given you a very good sub award. Okay, and as an auditor, even though I know the prime should have given you something that you should be doing correctly, if you're not doing it correctly and it wasn't in your award, I can't hammer you. I can't find fault. I will tell you that, look, here's the rule, and you might consider migrating to this rule or doing what you should be doing, but I can't find fault if it wasn't in your award. So for the 5th time, everyone needs to read your award. And that's why when it comes to these cost principles here, I'm not saying the AOs have a right to overrule the cost principles. And when I talk to AOs, always anonymously, of course, so I never say John or June or Jane said this. No, but all of them say, I don't think I have the authority to overrule the uniform guidance. Okay. Okay, let's jump into them. Advertising, public relations. There's some pretty specific things here. And the whole point is, before the internet and virtual stuff, we had to do a lot of advertising to recruit people. You put it in the newspaper. We're looking for someone like this to do this. Okay. Or buying goods and services. We're looking to buy. So on the back page of the X Times or whatever, there'd be the wanted section or procurement section. Or, those would normally, you'd have to buy space. These days, websites normally do this. Okay. So, or you can do preferred vendors, or there's others ways to do it versus advertising. Okay. The third one, we don't see much as foreign, we're not building stuff. We're not doing manufacturing and stuff. So the third one doesn't apply. But the fourth one, program outreach, this is becoming very, relevant now. Okay, I would imagine most of you projects have a Facebook page. Many of you would have a LinkedIn reference. Okay, I mean, I see many projects, explaining their great stuff they're doing on LinkedIn. Realize none of you can use TikTok on a US government machine. So if you're using TikTok or your staff is using TikTok, or if you issue phones to your staff, they can't have TikTok on it. Okay, they can have Instagram, but they can't have TikTok. So just be very careful. But the bottom line is there's a lot of things that we'll be spending money on that could be program outreach that is social media. Okay, that's allowable. That's an allowable cost. Now, reasonable and allocable is a different question, but it is allowable to effectively have social media or outreach to reach your audience. Okay, let's not worry about public relations too much. But my only point here is, as we move more to, in many countries, government to government, and as we are, or government's going to have to be some kind of a partner, the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Labor or whatever ministry it is, you always want them, IPs, implementing partners, to think the highest of you. Okay, so if there's money, and then I would certainly, if there's money left over, and remember, as the dollar stays strong and many currencies depreciate against the dollar, you have more funds to play with. Okay, I know in Zambia and many other countries, I mean, the local currency, the kwacha or the rand here has gone from 14 to 19 over the last 2 years. So that $1 buys a lot more stuff. And if you have extra money, you might want to say to your AO or AOR, hey, why don't we blow the US government and our project's horn, right? Every HIV baby or every baby born to a positive mother who comes out negative, PMTCT, celebrated. Every orphan that graduates from high school, celebrate. Every, every 1,000 hectares that got, sown and bagged, celebrated. Because if I'm an IP, implementing partner, I want government, especially if that country is going to more G to G, the government's always going to need partners. So just think about public relations. Okay, other than those items, nothing else is allowable. Anything that's going to promote the organization specifically, not allowable. Okay, so frequently people have hats and shirts, that about the program. So it's a democracy. So you give out a shirt or a hat that says "I voted." Okay, but it's going to be "I voted" on the front and the back, and on the side, USAID, your NGO logo here, right? It's not going to be your logo, "I voted," and USAID here. Okay, so just be very careful. Of course, marketing and branding is important. But the important point about this is you're not going to use US government dollars to promote your organization. Alcohol, not allowed, very clearly. Okay. Audit services, also alumni association. This is a short version for you, but alumni is not allowed. You're going to say, where the hell did that come from? I never knew about that. Well, it was in the other cost principles, right? That was in the educational organization, right? The A120, A21, right? Most of these come from the A122 that we're looking at, the old A122 cost principles. But now it's only one set. And so alcohol not allowed, alumni activities not allowed. Let's talk about audit services. Okay, it's gotta be careful here. USAID is willing to pay their fair share. Okay, but what kind of audits are we talking about? Most countries, you need to have a statutory audit. Here in South Africa, where I've lived for 32 years, you need a statutory audit if the organization gets any kind of foreign funding. Okay, so of course, US government funding is foreign. They have to have a statutory audit. It's a requirement. So therefore, the US government will pick up its fair share, a reasonably proportionate share of the audit. Okay. Now here they're talking about the Single Audit Act, but remember, that's for guys who are in the States. And in the States, the Single Audit Act is going to incorporate your statutory audit. So for here, in my example, downstairs for a USAID project, upstairs the Global Fund, okay, I have to have the statutory audit. And this year I spent, as I said, $5 million on US government projects and $2 million upstairs. So therefore, we're going to pick up the statutory audit fees on a 5-to-2 ratio. When it comes to the Yellow Book audit, US government's going to pick up 100%, right? The only reason I'm having a Yellow Book audit is because the US government demands it. So they should pick all of it up. Why would the EU or Gates Foundation or Global Fund pick up a Yellow Book audit? They didn't want it. They're not going to use it. Okay, so certain types of audit costs are unallowable. So if you don't need the audit, if you're under the threshold, then don't get the audit. Okay, that would be a disallowed cost. Okay, and just be aware, currently the CDC foreign threshold is 300. That's maintained for the last 10 years. USAID used to be 300,000, then it bumped up to 750. But CDC never bumped it. Okay, so if you're getting CDC funds of 290,000 and you audit it, those are going to be disallowed. Okay, now if the audit has not been conducted in accordance with the uniform guidance, or the Yellow Book audit, then it should be rejected or force the auditor to go back and do it. So most of you are working in USAID missions that in the last 2 years have created a new acceptable audit list. Okay, they no longer say approved. They're hedging their bets. They're just saying these are acceptable firms. Okay, Southern Africa, we've got a list for South Africa, Lesotho, Eswatini, Botswana, and Namibia. Okay, those people are all in our list. Zimbabwe's got their own list. Uganda's got its own list. Tanzania has its own list. Many of your missions will have their own lists. Okay, you should probably try to select an auditor from, you're actually required to select an auditor from that list or a US-based audit firm. But there's very few of those or us here who work in Africa and America. Okay, so just try to find a good auditor in your country, look at the USAID list of acceptable firms and start there. Okay, but make sure the guys are competent. Okay, the team's not put on the list, the firm's put on the list. So when you're going out proposing for your audit or you're proposing for auditors, make sure when they propose, you ask the question, are the people on my audit, the people you're giving me, is the partner, is the manager, is the senior, are they all accredited? Do they all have do they all have knowledge of Yellow Book auditing? Because I've seen, I won't say which firm, but a big four firms, oh, we got the best audit team. This one, she's the best IT auditor in the country, and this one's worked on NGOs forever, but they don't know the Yellow Book. Okay, those could be disaster audits for you. And I've seen too frequently the auditor, they do poor auditing, and the mission says, well, they're on the list. I mean, they don't want to rock the boat because you selected them. So don't select a firm that's not going to give you a competent, high quality Yellow Book audit. Okay, as we said, if you're exempted from having an audit, that's going to be not allowable. Let's carry on. Go down to C. Okay, pass-through entities. So a prime can charge your prime award for the cost of assisting your subs to be competent, compliant, and capable. Okay, and we don't have time here. It's in the sub, but if you want to study this, if you're taking notes, go to 2 CFR 200, 332. Okay, and it's there under D and E. And that's where it says, look, primes, before you even issue a sub award, or if that's a double-edged sword, because you try to put together a consortium, and if you don't win, then you're not going to get any cost covered. So USAID sort of relented to, okay, you don't have to do it pre-award, but post-award, then you go in and see how strong they are. The problem with that is, what if they're weak? You didn't ask for enough money in your budget. Okay, so it is sort of a catch-22. You should also almost like do speed dating, if you will. If you're looking at a number of subs, try to figure out, have you worked with the US government before? Do you have adequate systems? And that's what the pre-award survey is. That's where ASAP, the IntraHealth project for the last 3 years, has done probably close to 100 of what we call the NUPIS, the non-US pre-award survey. Okay, and they've got this down to a science now. And I'm sure you can get through the ASAP website what we call the NUPIS Plus document, where we've added additional domains that don't exist in the baby version, in the basic version. Okay, but regardless, you should be doing some kind of assessment on your subrecipients. What this says, 425C says, if you have to help them, and you're expected to, then you can charge your program, okay, as long as the work that the assistance that is being done is, one, conducted in accordance with GAGAS standards, right? That's chapter 7 of this book here. And when we train auditors, we train them on that so they can tick that they're competent. Okay, 2, paid for by the prime. So prime, if you've got subs, add money into your budget. And third, basically not audit services. That third one is you could drive a truck through that one in terms of, many things could be covered under this: cost principles, eligibility, accounting, reporting, internal controls, those are all acceptable. Okay, so if you're a prime and you're going to have weak subs, but for any reason they're not competent, don't do it yourself. Ask for the funding. Okay, bad debts, unallowable. Why should the U.S. government pay for your bad debts, right? Don't have bad debts. Have better controls. Communications, this is my example. Remember, now we used to be 407. It used to be cost principal 7 effectively, communications. And it used to say telephone, postage, internet are allowable. Doesn't say it anymore. People say, oh my God, can I charge this? What's the Bob Strauss rule, right? Any cost could be allowable if it's reasonable, allocable, not specifically disallowed, and supported. Okay, so communications costs, yes. So how do you get it approved? I've talked about it 4 times now, right? In your proposal, put in, I've got 100 community care workers or nurses working in the field. They have phones. We're giving them airtime, $10 a month or whatever, right? So you can say, yes, our nurses get phones. This cell time, this airtime is going to be used for the U.S. government purposes. And here's how much, it costs $10 per person or whatever. Okay, get it approved. Now, no one's going to deny that. Say, oh my God, well, you need community care workers. And this is just one example where there's no specific cost principle. Compensation, this one gets tough. It's, again, as I said, compensation basically requires some methodology for keeping time. And a lot of people have timesheets. Okay, people still do timesheets on paper and pen. Okay, people still use spreadsheets, but many people have migrated to online systems where you're able to do it on your phone or do it on your computer at night. And how do we take care of our time? Okay, but the U.S. government's very generous here. To be able to, what's allowable? We're talking allowability here, right? Not reasonableness. Is salary reasonable? We'll talk about that. But is salaries allowable? Many types of compensation are. Salaries, incentive, fringe, pension, hardship, medical, savings plans. All these things could be allowable to the extent that they're reasonable. We'll talk about that. Follows an appointment made with local laws. This is so critical, right? Because the rules are changing. Think about it. With people working from home, you've got hybrid systems. Just managing people online is an issue, but attracting their time and what are the labor laws around that? So for each country, I think you'd find a top labor person. Doesn't have to be a lawyer necessarily, but someone who knows the rules of your country and make sure they create your contracts with your employees that incorporate all of these things. Okay, there's no place that it's more important to have written stuff than it is in your employment contracts and in your policies on compensation and fringe benefits. Okay, then finally, determined or supported, which equals timesheets or systems. Okay, what's reasonable? Concept of reasonable is what's consistent with salaries. So conceptually, if you've got a large organization, right, you're going to have bands of employees. I got doctors and nurses and HR people and M&E people and the community care workers, and they tend to form in bands, 0 to 3 years, 4 to 7, 7 and above, things like that, where it's logical that over time, people who are similar will start getting similar type salaries. Okay, so they'll have bands and things like that. So what this first bullet point says, it's consistent with salary paid for similar work in the organization's other activities. So in our example, if we've got 6 nurses and they're all been here 4 to 7 years, then they're probably going to be paid relatively similar. Now, some may be better workers or be willing to work in rural areas or have extra language skills that you may get something extra for it, but you'd be able to document why they're getting something extra for it. Right? They were rated high last year versus the guy who got rated poorly. Well, there would be a difference there in compensation. Okay, so again, like people in an organization doing like things should generally be paid similarly. The other point is the labor market. Okay, because the labor market is a good determination of people's value. And so I see 3 types of labor markets. One, the private sector. In many countries, you get paid more to be in the private sector because they may work you harder or for whatever reason, you want to be in the private sector better, like who knows what. Private sector, let's just assume, generally pays more than the public. Not necessarily in every country. Okay, some countries have very good benefits. Even South Africa here has great benefits for some of the public care workers. Okay, then the next type of labor market, I think, is the international NGOs, the big guys. World Visions, Care, Save the Children, the FHI types, because, I just mentioned FHI because you can picture it's a big global organization. They're going to have some nice policies. They may have a pension plan. They will have a medical plan. Okay, so that you can't compare that with the third category, which is a startup NGO who's a local NGO, and they're just getting their feet started. They're not going to have a pension plan. They're not going to have a medical plan, right? They're existing probably because the creator is passionate about something, save the something, and you're not going to get great salaries. And if you're just as passionate about saving that something, you're willing to work there, probably for less. Okay, so when you're trying to justify people's costs, just be careful. Trying to compare yourself apples and apples. Okay, again, you could. This 430 is the largest cost principle still out there, so I don't have nearly enough time to cover it. But I just want to highlight here this nonprofit organizations. Okay, the first bullet point is unallowable costs, which we're not going to talk about. We're going to talk about NGOs like yourself. It specifically says compensation for board members, trustees, officers are allowable if reasonable. Right? So you don't accept that USAID or CDC says we don't pay for that. That's not a direct cost. 405D, you do pay for it, right? You just have to IPs, you just have to know to ask for it. And point specifically to this, right? Our directors, our board are specifically allowable. Okay, just highlight that when you're putting that into your proposal. Because they're going to say, what? Board? That's what the 10% de minimis is for. No, it's not. Direct costed, you're going to use the 10% for something else. Okay, incentive compensation, just briefly, you need 3 specific things for incentive compensation. 1, it's got to benefit the project, meaning a cost reduction or an increase in performance. Okay, so you got to be able to measure this. And the only way you can measure it is if you've decided it before performance starts. Okay, so you can't get to the end of the year and offer incentive payments because there's no incentive there. You start at the beginning of the year and say, great, you normally do X. So you're a doctor, you normally do 100 male circumcisions. If you do 150, we'll give you incentive. Now, how much is that incentive? This incentive is documented nowhere in these guidelines, okay? Nowhere. Now, my friend Mark Hoffman, who for 40 years has been working on the contracting side of life for the U.S. government, he said, Doug, there's an example here on the contractor side, and basically incentive would be an extra month of salary, so like a 13th check, which would be 8.5% to 10%. Okay, anything over that, you just assume. I mean, there's no hard and fast rule on this. More so on the contracting side, but I think you'd have to really struggle to give someone more than 8 to 10% incentive payment. Okay, how do we document our personal expenses? Okay, now I haven't talked briefly. I haven't talked at all about the concept of must versus should. But the concept came out of the GAO, Government Accountability Office, where effectively it worked so well for auditors that the guy who created COFAR, Council on Financial Assistance Reform, Gilbert Tran, said he's in the OMB, but he was the head of the COFAR, the guys who made the uniform guidance. He said, you know what, guys? This concept works very well in the auditor space, must versus should. Let's bring it over into the uniform guidance. Okay, so at section 101, 2 CFR 200-101, it says the concept of must versus should applies. Meaning if in your award it says you must do something, in theory, IPs, you must. The uniform guidance itself has 881 must references, the old version. The standard provisions, the attachment to your USAID award has 351 musts or must nots. Okay, do you think you do all 351 of those? I doubt it. Do we auditors audit 351 of those? No. It's up to the auditor to determine which one of those musts could have a material effect on the financial statements if you didn't do it. Okay, timekeeping is one of those, and probably the most prominent one that you get wrong. So look at these musts, okay? Charges to your award for salaries and wages, and that's normally the first line item on your award, right? Salaries, fringe benefits, whatever else, that's going to be the biggest line item because we have people, okay? So those wages must be based on records that accurately reflect what people did. Okay, further down here, it says no budgets. Budgets is not an acceptable reason. I know so many of you that use budget to charge time. You've got multiple awards. You're saying, okay, how are we going to split this? Well, I put this guy into the budget for 30%, so he or she is going to be in for 30%. I can promise you as an auditor, if I see a timesheet that has a decimal point, you're using a budget system, because no one keeps track of their time at a quarter of an hour or whatever else. If you do, congratulations. But generally, I'm going to see, and I'm going to say, how did you calculate that? So, well, we gave him 40% of his time on this project and 30% of the time on this project and the remainder on this project or overhead. Okay, that's a foul. I mean, if I had a red card, I'd be waving it right now. That's the most prominent reason costs get rejected. Okay, so just don't let that happen to you. You need to keep accurate, and allocable timekeeping. Okay, you need official records of the organization. So almost everyone keeps track of time somehow. Some of you may say, well, they check in the morning, they check out at night. Not acceptable. Biometric systems, not acceptable. Okay, they can be indicative, but you can't say, oh, I've got biometric. And so therefore, when the guy went through this door to this door, that's what he or she was doing. It doesn't work that way. Okay, you're going to need some sort of timesheet. Very rarely you could get an AO approval if you say, look, this guy or she or he is a nurse, and the only thing they live for is this project. Okay, and possibly, I can't say again, it would be AO dependent. They may say, okay, then I just need an attendance register, but assume that's not going to be adequate. Okay, you got to reflect total activity for which the guy is compensated. Okay, but here I'm downstairs, my M&E person's working 60% here and 40% there. And so now the auditor comes in, and I'm Doug, your auditor. I'm saying, but I want to see that guy's timesheet. And you're saying, Doug, I didn't hire you to audit upstairs. I hired you to audit my USAID project. And I say, yeah, I understand that. Okay, but I have to understand that how that person's spending 100% of their time. Okay, now the reason for that is a bit beyond this course, but it's really more of an indirect cost concept. Because as I said earlier, right, you should be charging your indirect time, your bid and proposal, your sick, your leave, your military leave, all that needs to go on your timesheet so you can put the cost into the overhead pool for the direct cost space. So it's really not the U.S. government caring how much time you spend on the global fund project. It's being able to assist with your indirect cost calculations. Okay, that's why your timekeeping system has to encompass both U.S. government projects, meaning federally assisted, and other activities on an integrated basis. So I want to see one timesheet. I don't want to see a USAID timesheet and a global fund timesheet. I want to see a timesheet. More musts. Records must comply with the policies of your organization. So show me your policies and procedures. Okay, support the distribution. One more time, and we've already said this, support the distribution of their time between the different projects. Okay, so I spent 4 hours on this project, 4 hours upstairs. Tomorrow, 6 hours upstairs, 2 hours downstairs. Okay, Friday, I spent 8 hours here and no time upstairs. Okay, so that's what we'll be looking for. Then finally, I'm going to end here. Budget estimates do not qualify. I don't like this because it's not as clear as the original cost principle. Okay, this doesn't make it clear. Do not qualify as support. Estimates don't. But it says can be used for interim accounting purposes. Meaning, great, your people, you want the timesheet on the 20th of the month, but you pay them on the on the end of the month. Well, that could be, you can use budget for that. But at the end of the day, when you're actually allocating your costs to that project in your general ledger or on your CFA or fund accountability statement, you need a timesheet. You need some system. Okay, they never use the word timesheet. They use the word systems and things like that. But almost in all these cases, you can insert or swap timesheet in, and it would make sense. Okay, all we have time for in fringe benefits here is that all I want to say is these things need to be documented in writing, and I want to see consistency between my U.S. government project and your other guys. It can't be, oh, the U.S. government, you're working on the USAID project, you get a pension plan, a savings plan, a medical plan, right? How much time off without pay for maternity leave and so forth. But if you work for us, well, you don't get any of that because we can't afford it. Our little NGO can't afford to give the CEO's personal assistant that because she's not working on the USAID. Okay, that's not going to fly. I want to see written policies and procedures consistently applied. I'm going to leave it at that. Because yeah, that's all about all the time we have for this. Okay, conferences. What the big switch came here that just goes on to say here, exercise discretion and judgment to make sure it's reasonable. Okay, so you're not going to be having conferences in Sun City or on the beach in Cape Town or Las Vegas or Disney World, or pick your favorite spot in your country or your region. The Burj in Dubai. No, okay, you're going to use a 3-star, 3.5-star Holiday Inn for your conference. I think here, from a reasonable point of view, I wouldn't want to have anything better than the U.S. government uses for their conferences. And consider, sometimes U.S. government says, no, you can't have it, even though we have it there, right? And you can say, why? Well, they have it for extra security or something like that. Maybe you NGOs don't need it, okay? So just be careful where you have your conferences. Depreciation. If you own your own assets, you can charge depreciation. Okay, it used to be called a use charge, and effectively that's what depreciation is, isn't it? It's a use charge. But if you own your own building, your own computers, your own equipment, your generators, your X-ray machines, CD4 counters, whatever, you can charge depreciation. And this is basically that's why it depends on your country. Normally the international or American accounting systems have, normal depreciation ranges, 4 to 5 years for a, Toyota Hilux, 20 to 40 years for a building, 1 or 2 years for a computer. It's going to be all those sort of normal useful lives. Okay. Employee health and welfare costs. Take care of your employees. Notice down here, morale was taken out a while ago. It used to say morale, health, and welfare. Morale, because what falls under morale? Team building. That gets a little bit iffy. It's almost entertainment in some stages. So if you're going to have a morale session, team building, you're going to need prior approval for that. Doesn't mean it's not allowed, just means you need prior approval. But employee health and welfare is specifically. So why aren't you having a annual diabetes, blood check, blood pressure, HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis, all these tests, stress tests, heart checks, EEGs, EKGs? Maybe those might be a bit much, but the bottom line is if you're running 30 or 100 employees through, I'm sure the costs come down. You want happy, healthy employees. Entertainment, this one's changing, as I said. Okay, so it's coming out. This is prior approval. So what we're talking about here is not entertainment for your Diwali, Christmas, Kwanzaa party. We're talking about entertainment for programmatic purposes, right? If you want to get 10,000 youth into a stadium to hear about whatever, HIV or democracy and governance, you're not going to get the chief of party to draw them. You're going to need an entertainer, a sports hero, a famous disc jockey, or some known quantity in that country. Then he or she entertains, and at the halftime, your person comes out to get the message across. Okay, that would be allowable. And it used to require prior approval. I don't know. I see some concerns here. Anyway, such as an auditor, I can see there's some risks in here. As I say, equipment capital expenditure. This is an area you need a person to do a little bit more focusing, other than just reading the rules, because there's a lot of deviations from what might appear to be straightforward. Okay, so just make sure, and if you're not sure, ask your agreement officer. Now notice here, for example, general purpose equipment, vehicles are generally, general purpose equipment, vehicles fall into there. Look at the next slide, okay? General purpose equipment is unallowable as a direct charge, unless with prior approval. I bet all of you are charging your program vehicles as a direct charge, right? In theory, you'd have to get prior approval, not just to buy the vehicle, but you'd have to ask your AO, dear AO, not only am I seeking your approval to buy it, I'm seeking your approval to buy it as a direct cost. I bet none of you have gone that far and asked that. Now, as an auditor, are we going to hammer you for it? No. But the bottom line is, remember, these rules are US-based, the cost principles. So if you're going to buy a vehicle in a US NGO, there's a chance that you're working on multiple projects. Okay, so it wouldn't make sense there. And remember, if you're going to have a vehicle in the US, you're going to have a NITRA. So that'll go into the indirect cost pool. So it never becomes an issue. Okay. Again, so just stick with me here, to say that equipment and procurement and salaries and timekeeping are all need extra study. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm just going to finish here and handle all the, unless you've got something burning, I'm going to finish trying the next 20 minutes and then handle any questions. You happy with that?
It's no problem.
Great. Okay, exchange rates, this one's disappearing. And think about it. Okay, you generally at a prime get dollars. Your award's in dollars. CDC, USAID, it's in dollars. Okay, the dollar is pretty strong, and you never would have invoked this in the first place, although this is disappearing. You wouldn't have invoked it unless your currency strengthened against the dollar. Meaning here in South Africa, 2 years ago, the rand was 14 rand to the dollar, and now it's 19. Meaning you're still sitting with dollars, and when you convert them, you're getting more and more rands. That's the norm, more and more local currency. This was for when your currency strengthened. Something in your country happened, you found gold or oil or whatever, rare earth minerals, and the investors are going to come, and they, the exchange starts to favor. And now, instead of in South Africa, instead of our budget was at 14, now it's 10, then I'm not going to have enough money. In those circumstances, you'd be able to go ask for funding. They're not necessarily guaranteed to give it to you, but you're allowed to ask. So they're doing away with this principle because they say you can't. None of us can control exchange rates. So if it's going to exchange, it already happened. Okay, which just means if you're running out of money, you make two choices: ask and get more, or do less work. Now, I've had a lot of people complain that unfortunately, doing less work tends to mean they fire the lower level employees and keep the management. So there's some unhappiness through NGOs that they get their funding cut, but it never seems to touch the leadership level. Okay, goods or services for personal use, not allowed. The company vehicle. I don't want to see your company vehicle at the bar on Friday night parked next to the EU, every other agency out there, CETA, DANITA, everyone else's four-wheel drive Toyota Corolla, Toyota Land Cruiser, right? I mean, you're not supposed to use the U.S. government vehicles for personal use. And I don't think anyone's working at the bar on Friday nights. Okay, so just be careful there if you're going to park it around the corner, right? And if you don't have a Toyota Land Cruiser, you should be putting it behind anyways. Most people are embarrassed, right, that if they've got a Ford now. Okay, and some of you can get waivers. There's waivers for not buying American. But remember, the Ford Ranger now is almost the vehicle of choice in many countries. Okay, so you can buy America. For CDC, you're expected to buy American. Okay, I was on the American Chamber here for 14 years, past president, and we had Ford Motor Company here. They were lobbying USAID to say our vehicles are as good as Toyota. The problem is, how about the fixing network? How about the maintenance network? But in many countries now, there are American, a GM or a Ford dealership or a Ford somewhere. And if you're not going to take your vehicle out of the capital city, and there's a Ford dealer there, consider buying American vehicles. I'm not just pushing Ford, but American vehicles. Okay, insurance indemnification. Okay, the concept here is that if you insure your own property, you must insure the U.S. government property. Okay, so and even you say, oh, they're not likely to steal a USAID vehicle. Doesn't matter. If that vehicle gets stolen, and then you're going to have to reimburse it yourself. Actual losses that could have been covered through allowable insurance, and that insurance is allowable, are unallowable. Meaning you're going to have to go out of pocket to replace something that you should have insured. Now, I don't want to get too deep here because we don't have time, but U.S. government's if you're a doctor, they'll provide insurance. If I'm a director of a company, I want D&O insurance, director and officers insurance, right? So U.S. government is pretty good about allowing insurance. So consider what to insure and then do it. Maintenance and repair, 100%. Repair the vehicles, repair the generators, maintain them. Because more likely at the end of the project, you're going to get to keep it anyways when you do your asset disposition plan. Okay, U.S. government doesn't want back, beat up 5-year-old Toyotas. Okay, yeah, they may ask you to pass it on to the next project or keep it for the next project. That's a whole nother discussion. But the bottom line is you're expected to maintain vehicles, generators, tractors, whatever equipment or buildings that you have. Participant support costs. Remember, this is part of MTDC. It's an exclusion. And this is what the new one's going to say. Okay, there's something called a red line version. And if you want, at the end of the award, at the end of this presentation, you'll see my email address. I'm happy to send you I say the red line version where, all of these proposed changes are, it looks like a horror movie. I mean, the whole thing is red. Okay, so I'm just giving you the most important ones, but if you truly want to be prepared, you probably would want to read the full version. Okay, so this is what prior participant support costs are. I think the biggest takeaway for me of these is generally it means non-employees, because we don't give employees stipends, we give them a salary. So this normally you're going to have some community care workers or guys who are going to do something, set up tents for us every week when we're having our community meetings, or they're going doing some kind of surveys or something. So we're going to pay them a stipend, not a salary. Consider tax implications. Subsistence allowance, they're going to be out of town for 3 days, handing out flyers or whatever. We allow them to travel. And again, if they're going to register, if they're going to have some kind of a training. But yeah, that's what's been cut out of the red line version. Plant security, protect your people, protect your assets, protect your data. Don't forget, okay, data. Now, data's getting, because let me just say this, contractors are not allowed to use Kaspersky as your data protection tool. I think many people do because it's a fairly good one, has been in the past. Okay, contractors can't. They haven't pushed that rule yet onto NGOs, but given Russia and the US right now, I would not be surprised. Of course, Kaspersky's Russian. So while it's a good tool, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future, and especially if Trump gets in, that there would be a push to say, you IPs can't use this Russian product for 2 reasons, right? Well, main reason, there could be a backdoor and your data might not be safe. Okay, protect your people mainly though, and of course your data and your PPII, your personally protected information. There's a lot of sensitive data NGOs have. People's TB. Okay, TB obviously not as sensitive as HIV/AIDS, but there's many things. I mean, rights, people's human rights, gay, lesbian rights, or voter leaning. If you're doing democracy and governance, many countries aren't happy with U.S. government democracy and governance programs, funding NGOs to understand, your rights. Well, that doesn't go down in a lot of countries. So people who are involved in those programs certainly should not be easily identifiable, either your employees or, of course, the target audience in the country. Okay, professional service costs. That just says, so when you're buying your auditor, your lawyer, your engineer, your architect, all these are professionals. And in addition to the procurement rules that come in the procurement section down in the 300s, 319, 20, 21, this comes into play in the cost principles as well. So when you're hiring professionals, you want to have a contract that's pretty ironclad, only buying what you need, making sure the people are competent, qualified, certified, and the contract is quite strict in terms of when you're going to do it, what the rates are, and so forth. Okay, so again, your Yellow Book audit is going to be specifically, the U.S. government gives a statement of work to the USAID, gives a statement of work to you IPs. So you can, when you're putting out a request for proposal, you just attach that and say, Doug or auditors, here's what you have to do. Okay, we know what we have to do, but chances are you don't know what a Yellow Book audit is. It's got a certain structure and all this kind of stuff. So that is you make that statement of work part of your contract with the auditors, for example. Okay, a few more things. Proposal costs, I did say, right? This is probably the reason you would claim if you had to, why you need the 10% de minimis. Okay, so proposal cost of both, in the current period, of course, you can't go retroactive, but both winning and losing proposals for U.S. government and non-U.S. government projects. So who would think of that? You spend months doing the losing EU proposal, and the U.S. government's going to pick up its fair share, but only as an indirect cost. Okay, that's why many organizations have a NICRA. They'll go for any project out there because they can't lose. They're going to recover their costs through the indirect cost rate. So there's, if you want a USAID basket weaving in Baluchistan project, there's guys who are going to go for that. I can find a chief of party who knows basket weaving. He'll go to Baluchistan, right? I pay him enough, he'll go there. And so the whole point is that most of us don't have the NICRA. So the only way you can legitimately recover this is going to be through your de minimis rate. That's why, again, 15%, if you're doing a lot of proposing, the 15%, you may need all of that if you're doing a lot of proposals. Okay, we're almost done here. Recruiting, there's pretty specific rules around recruiting. Remember I said earlier when we talked about advertising, recruiting is one of those things you need. But all I want to say here with the time we have is if you employ an employee, if you hire an employee and you relocate them from, who knows, maybe Entebbe to Kampala, or Durban to Joburg, or wherever, Nairobi to Mombasa, or Abuja to Lagos. If that person resigns within 12 months, that cost is not going to be recoverable. Okay, so if you're going to move someone, you got to make sure it's for the benefit of the project, and she or he's going to stick the whole 12 months. And it's hard to do that because you don't have unpaid leave, or you don't have overtime. You have no hook on that guy normally in the first year. And frequently that's what happens. You guys come from a rural area, he or she is a genius, but they don't know him. And you find this diamond in the rough, literally. You bring him to the headquarters, and they see the bright lights, and they see other people, and they say, they meet other people, and they find out that you're underpaying them, and they're gone, right? So, and that's what the ASAP project had very interesting. We don't have time here, but they had very interesting studies they did on compensation for not all of you, but for many of you. And they found that a lot of times the pay for the people is not in the upper half, right? So you basically, by and large, a lot of NGOs are underpaying versus the market, which means you're going to lose your people. But all I'm saying here is when you're hiring and relocating, just be very careful. Okay, rental, you're allowed to rent. There's a lot of different rules on rental, but let's just say you should always try to prove you got the best arm's length market-related value. Okay, so you can, there's a lot of rules on less than arm's length leases, and so you might sell your building and lease back into it, which would be a sweetheart deal. But the bottom line is you should never charge the U.S. government more than you would have paid if you rented an arm's length competitive process to hire something where there's no relationship, or well, that's it. Basically, it should be an arm's length fair deal on rental. And don't go try to get A grade recessed lighting, plush furniture, carpets. You don't need that. Put the money into the program. Okay, taxes. This one's disappearing, about VAT at least, but most countries have VAT, value-added tax. VAT is allowable only if you can't recover it. In most countries, here in South Africa, if you earn more than any of you are ever going to get from the U.S. government, you would be able to register for VAT, and therefore you're going to recover your VAT. So many people may spend, here it's 15%. So if I'm going to go out and buy $100 something, I'm going to pay $115. $100 for the item, $15 for the value-added tax. Okay, I'm going to have to claim that money back, and more often than not, I will get it back. That money belongs to the U.S. government. Okay, so but you have to do the reconciliations to make sure that you're not ultimately charging VAT to the U.S. government projects. Okay, termination costs. This goes along very much with closeout, but the U.S. government, I think, is too generous, allowing people to continue to charge things that if they were smart, they wouldn't have, they'd have thought more in the closeout period to try to get a 15-month lease versus another 1-year lease, where the thing's going to sit there empty. Okay, it says rental costs on unexpired leases are allowable, but why should they be? I mean, NGOs should be a little bit smarter when they're getting their leases and haggling over, especially these days with so much office space being available. But the bottom line is termination costs are generally allowable at the prime or the sub level. Okay, education, very allowable. These 12 words, it's the shortest cost principle. But my question is, so education historically was not meant to be for degree work, not a bachelor's, not a master's, not for a PhD. It would be for someone getting some sort of additional skill, a medical qualification for blood, or COVID something, or an accountant getting a tax, some sort of tax or value-added tax certificate. It's not meant. The question, so education is allowable. The question is it allocable? I don't want to see a doctor studying financial management, right? I don't want to see an accountant studying, underwater basket weaving. Okay, it's got nothing to do with your job. It's got to be allowable and allocable and reasonable. Okay, that's why, remember, the cost principles are all about allowability. Okay, travel. Again, I've already said this is a pretty an area that needs additional attention. But the bottom line here is that State Department at www.state.gov has our travel policies. They have the FTR, federal travel policies. You need a person who's going to understand these fairly well. As I said earlier, I want to see consistency in the organization. I don't want to see anybody flying business class unless you're going to pay for it yourself. The U.S. government allows up to what's called full fare economy. And generally in the States, there's a ticket level that means you can change your ticket without a penalty. Like here in South Africa, we don't have that. If I book an economy ticket and I need to change the date, I'm going to pay, right? But in America, there's that threshold. That is the highest threshold you can charge to the U.S. government. So your CFO can fly business class, but you're going to have to pay for it, or she's going to have to pay for it. Your board can fly business class, but you're going to have to, they're going to, well, not they, you're going to have to come up with it with your unrestricted funds. Okay, so just be careful there. So assume it's all going to be economy unless you've got some really specific reasons. Circuitous routing, I got to fly to Bangkok, to Hong Kong, to San Francisco to get to Boston. No, you could therefore, if a ticket's available that could go more directly, that could be possible. I don't want to go through all of these, but medical needs might be a reason that you have to have a big seat because who knows, you need a drip or something. But generally, assume you're going economy. Finally, trustees. I showed you earlier in the cost principles earlier in compensation. Trustees and directors are allowable costs. Well, so is their travel and per diems, subject to, as we said, travel. Subject to basically economy. Okay, I've got a few more minutes to zip through the audit, and I just want to do this quickly because a lot of people don't understand the difference between a yellow book audit and an A133 or subpart F audit. Right, that's the final box in that very busy slide. Subpart F. Okay, subpart F applies in the States or to US-based organizations. It does not apply. It specifically says on the A133, page 1, number 4, these rules do not apply to foreign organizations. Okay, what does apply is the yellow book. Okay, so for many years, I taught the yellow book, an AICPA course to auditors. And the most useful description I found in that entire course was how to explain the difference between a yellow book audit and an A133 audit, what it used to be called. Okay, and the concept is it's 3 layers of a cake. The bottom layer of the audit cake is the country or the standards. So ISA is the international standards on auditing, or the US has generally accepted auditing standards. That's the foundation. That's independence, integrity, judgment. All these sort of the bedrock of auditors, what enables them to audit in that country, a statutory audit. On top of that is the yellow book, the second layer. So the yellow book isn't a different way of auditing. It's a different way, essentially, of reporting to the reader, the agreement officer, the GMO, the contracting officer, right? It's specific on findings and how do we report certain things. That's what the yellow book is. That's what applies overseas. The next level is a higher level. And that's why people are confused, because subpart F or 500 talks frequently about the yellow book. And so people say, well, it applies. No, it doesn't. It's different. It's different ways of analyzing risk. It's additional. It incorporates the statutory statements, which the yellow book doesn't. It has different thresholds on, I just don't want to keep going there, but just trust me. Foreign organizations do not get the same audits that the US organizations do. And so be careful. A lot of US-based primes, I've seen the US-based prime hammer an African prime, basically, in Africa, because they said your audit report isn't correct. It was correct. The guys in the States just didn't understand the rules, okay? So audit recipients, if you're going to get funding from a US organization, make sure they understand what type of audit you're going to get. Local auditors here in Africa generally can't even do those type of audits. It's a different type of audit. It's more. It's unnecessary, and we don't do it. Okay, that's the yellow book I just showed you. Notice what it says here. The COFAR people say this last for-profit organizations, foreign entities are not subject to the single audit. They're not subject to the single audit. Right there, and I've got it 1,000 other places if you need it. Right here, A133. What does it say right here in the green right? This is from the horse's mouth. This is from Gil Tran. I visited him in Washington at the OMB asking, Gil, why doesn't this apply overseas? And he gave me a long story explaining it, but you don't need the story. You can read it in black and white. This A133 does not apply to foreign organizations. Okay, well, there's audit guidelines for foreign auditors. So again, IPs, if you're in the finance office, you may want to read these guidelines because it tells you what we auditors are going to engage with you and what we're going to do. Okay, sort of finally, what an audit package is, it is what you may call an income statement, or it used to be called a fund accountability statement, but now it's called a SEFA, Schedule of Expenditure of Federal Award. Okay, in that we will also have, so we're going to have an opinion on the SEFA. In our opinion, your records, your opinion, your records, fairly present the organization's operations for your fiscal year. Okay, conducted in accordance with GAGIS, what. Okay, then there'll be a report on internal controls and a report on terms and conditions. Did you follow all the rules that you had to follow in your award? All those musts that you're supposed to do. We auditors think these 20 are important. Did you do those? If not, you're probably going to have a finding you weren't compliant with the terms and conditions, or you had weak internal controls. Again, the Green Book, you're not going to see it, but basically you had poor internal controls as per 303. That's your guideline there. If you had poor controls, that's a problem. If it caused a problem. Okay, otherwise it's just a general weakness. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. And hopefully that completes the USAID puzzle for today. That's the cost principles. Sorry I went over an hour, but I hope some of you still got benefit from it. Okay, if anyone's still here, Melissa, let's go for your questions.
Sure, we have several questions here. We have a couple questions about board compensation. It says, how do we measure reasonableness for board compensation cost?
Okay, good question. When I sit on boards, I did it for free, actually, but most people don't. So the concept of board salaries, the concept of a board person is a board. If someone's going to sit on a board, they need to be responsible and they need to come prepared to board meetings. That's the first thing, which means there needs to be normally most countries say a board pack has to be sent to the directors, X weeks or whatever in advance. So the rule of thumb is a board member should get paid 2 hours of preparation for every hour of board seating. Meaning if a board meeting is going to take half a day, that guy should get paid, he or she should get paid a full day to prepare for a half day. Okay, now the rate is, it's not anywhere, and there's no, people who sit on NGO boards either do it for free, or if they're not going to do it for free, it's not going to be like sitting on a listed company board. So I can't tell you, but I would say if a guy's willing to sit for $200, $250 an hour, that's probably fair. Okay, I don't expect a guy to get charged $1,000 an hour, but anywhere between 200 and 400, I would say is fair. Again, it would depend. Yeah, it's just me as an auditor. I sit on boards, and most of mine are free. They're all free, as a matter of fact. But I know people who do sit on boards for money, and again, we work in rands here, but I think $250 an hour is a pretty fair rate. Next question.
Another question related to salaries. This one is about executive salaries.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend for these roles that are supported by all grants in the organization, or that the role supports all grants in the organization, are charged indirectly or allocations based on grant size? It says sometimes these individuals were fronted in the grants application as a key role, for example, a PI or a business official, which typically take 100% LOE, or should these roles be separated by different individuals? So I guess guidance on how to allocate executive salaries.
Okay, well, that's a very good question. And remember, the rule there would be a cost principle 405, and I would go straight to D, because you do need board members to be a compliant U.S. government partner. Okay? They expect it. When we do the pre-award surveys, we look for that. Okay, so is it an expectation? Yes. Now, how do we allocate them? Well, I would say the easiest way board memberships would be based on that concept of if in the example I gave, the simple example, this project downstairs is whatever, 5 million, upstairs is 2 million. So, 5/7 of the board members' costs go downstairs to USAID, 2/7 go upstairs to the Global Fund project. Because there's no, you can't sit in a board meeting. I mean, people don't take notes of which project were you talking about. Because at board levels, you don't generally talk specifically about projects unless there's a problem. Same thing with lawyers. Accountants, well, again, accountants, the statutory audit is for everyone. It's on that. I'll leave it at that. Executives, I would say, would be the 405D or the A3, the same concept, right? We cannot, there's no logical basis for assigning costs. I've got to incur them, but there's no logical basis. So I would do it based on size of the project relative each year. So it'd be great. All of a sudden, the Elton John Foundation comes in and, they're giving us $1 million. So we're getting 5 million, 2 million, and 1 million from the Elton John Foundation. Well, they've got to pick up 1/8 of the board fee. And realize many of these very good charitable trusts are happy to donate. They just don't want to pick up overhead costs. So, IPs don't take money if you're not going to get the correct allocable overheads. Next, good question.
Great. The next question is kind of getting at something similar to what you were just talking about. It says, how do donors, what would you do in the situation of separate donors like the CDC where you don't get a de minimis? How should you deal with shared costs? It is likely that the final charge might be more than what you estimated in the budget. So how would you deal with that?
Okay, yeah. So CDC, and I literally trained them yesterday, so I had 2 days of good interactions on this. I think they're coming around to realize that as we move towards localization, okay, and as we move towards, remember, CDC is not really a development agency; it's a spending agency in the States. But they don't do projects in the States. They fund hospitals and clinics and activities, but they're not developmental. So they're sort of now catching up with USAID and saying, "Oh, we've got developmental projects." But the problem is that their rules and regulations don't really follow like USAID. And so that's why when you're doing your CDC proposals, you have to be quite clear exactly what we've just talked about here at 405. What is a direct cost? What is an allocable rental type indirect cost or joint and common cost, joint or common to more than one project? And which ones of those are, like I've just talked about, the board and stuff like that? And you highlight to them, these are specifically allowable. Point out the board I just showed you in compensation, that board directors are allowable if reasonable. Their travel, trustees, and for the last cost principle specifically said, directors and trustees, travel fees are allowable. So that's what you have to highlight. I think CDC is going to be, unfortunately, too many CDC partners don't even get the 8%. It's not a de minimis, it's an 8% indirect cost rate. Okay, that is auditable. Okay, so CDC is just tougher money, unfortunately. And so you have to justify it. And you have to think, if they're not going to give you your overheads, then where are they going to come from? Unless you've got, we're just working with a donor that has very, very strong, one of the European countries gives them a huge amount of unrestricted funds. Well, if you're going to get unrestricted funds, a lot of it, then it's not a big deal. They'll pay for your overheads. But very few people have that luxury. Okay, so don't take a project that doesn't come with overheads, or if it's CDC funding, direct cost everything. Okay, and then that 8%, even though it's auditable, if you've direct costed everything, that 8% will cover the the fluff that you for somehow haven't been able to justify an allocation methodology. Okay, but they'll give it to you if you ask correctly. Next question.
Well, we have a question here about, does USAID enforce organizations to have medical aid and a pension as required by the Labor Department? So this might go to like employee benefits.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it would be, correct? So the bottom line is the US government will never ask you to break a rule of another country. So if it's a policy in Zambia to have benefits or whatever, unemployment compensation, unemployment insurance, right? Well, any type of thing that you must incur in that to be legal in that country is an absolute must. Okay, you have to do it. You're supposed to do it. U.S. government doesn't want you to, to deviate from local policies. So yeah, Those would be fringe policies that you would document. And in theory, before USAID gives you the money, or any US government agency, in theory, they're supposed to perform their own surveys and make sure that your policies and procedures are correct and that they do incorporate these things. Because let's think what happens, right? You're an NGO and you don't do something, you don't pay pensions, and then later, 3 years later, the guy quits and complains to the Labor Department that this NGO is not respecting the laws of our country, and it turns into a legal headache and they get closed. Okay, so yes, they will, if it's a requirement of the country, they will pay for it. Next question. I'm sorry, I'm dragging it out and I see the drops,
Okay.
the numbers are dropping here. Okay, a couple more.
There's a question here on membership or subscription fees paid to professional bodies on behalf of employees working directly under the subaward. Can you explain award/subaward? Can you expand on that?
Okay, well, the whole point is chances are you got your job. You won your project because you've got doctors or accountants, qualified people, or nurses, or you get, depending what you're doing, maybe ag specialists or whatever. We're not all PEPFAR and HIV/AIDS. And so you've got specialists that have earned their right and they're qualified. Now, just because they come to work for the US government project doesn't mean, they put that qualification on hold. The US government still wants them to have that qualification, to maintain it, to be a good doctor, be a good nurse, be a good engineer or accountant. So they're happy to pay their fair share for them. Okay, so that's what they say. So I'm an American CPA. In theory, I could charge some of my whatever it is dollars CPA fee each year to, if I was working on a specific USAID project, that project would pick up its $10, $20, $50 of whatever that annual fee is, and going to the conferences and the continuing education and the books and the periodicals that come from that organization. So it's quite sweet, but it's only for professionals. Okay, but remember, it's allowable. The question is it allocable? Is that doctor still doing doctor work on my project, or has she decided to become M&E or trying to do finance? Okay, then it's not allocable. So again, cost principles are all about allowability, not reasonableness, not allocability. Okay, next question.
Sure. We have a question here that says, is the US government or USG considering specific indirect rate guidance for local organizations?
No. The guidance is you go to usaid.gov and look up indirect costs. It'll show you the guidance. It's not the guidance that changes. What's going to change is our non-US based agreement officers willing to issue a NICRA. Okay, in South Africa, we've been blessed by having very competent, confident agreement officers, because the agreement officer takes personal liability for issuing a NICRA. So that's why there's like 8 or 9 guys in Washington, Ramon and Rami and the guys who all they do is NICRAs. They're experts at it. Okay, but asking a guy down here in Pretoria, 20 miles away, are you willing to do a NICRA? That's risky. I mean, we did in-house NICRA training for a few missions in East Africa. They're considering it. But the bottom line is, unless an agreement officer is willing to study your proposal, and that's what's in the guidelines. It's all there. But unless they're willing to take it and issue you the NICRA, you're wasting your time. Now, saying that, preparing for a NICRA, I talked about that cost policy statement. That's really what you're doing. And in those guides is, what is a cost policy statement? And that's what I said. How do we treat travel, direct or indirect? How do we treat rent, direct or indirect? Okay, and it sounds pretty easy. It can get more complicated when there's more than one building and admins in this building and all the doctors and nurses and the clinics are in the building. So it's not as easy as just, simple decisions. But no, the process is exactly the same. It's just who's going to adjudicate or give you that. Okay, and that's why, again, it makes sense for CDC. It's going to be hard for them because they don't have the people at their offices overseas who would ever think of doing that. That's not the role overseas for CDC. They're much more program related and doing the job. It's not the admin of CDC. That's all based in Atlanta. So that's why That's why, CDC is supposed to recognize USAID NICRAs overseas, but they're still struggling with that because, well, I can't say why, but let's just say they struggle. So our mission's willing to issue NICRAs. They're starting to get more willing. And now that if the de minimis goes to 15%, there'll be even more pressure to issue NICRAs because your NICRA might not be 15%. Next question.
We have a question that goes back to a similar concept as the professional membership. Would the same be applicable to a renewal of transport assistance driver's licenses for drivers on federal grants? Anyone that requires any licensing like that?
No, unfortunately, no. You're expected to have a license. I mean, they hire you as a driver because you have a license. I think the short answer is no. It's professional stuff. So no. I mean, the reason you got hired to be a truck driver or whatever is because you have a license. So they wouldn't. I've never seen it. I don't say you can't ask for it, but I mean, you're normally expected to be able to get to work on your own power, your own vehicle, whatever else, and then you use the agency's vehicles on the job. But a driver license is just an expectation. Okay. Or any other stuff like that. That's just generally a skill of the person. That's why it's just professional. They mean engineers, architects, that kind of stuff. Doctors. Okay. Two more questions. Pick your favorites.
There's a question here about is unrecoverable value add tax allowable cost for USAID project? If yes, what documentation do we need to book VAT as an expenditure?
Okay, so value-added tax. So the U.S. government normally has what's called a bilateral agreement with other countries. And they say South Africa, the last one was Al Gore and Thabo Mbeki, like 20 extra years ago. Yeah, but it still stands. And what it says, we, the U.S. government, are going to give development funds to your country, and we want that to go to development, not to the taxing system, which goes outside of development and goes to pay for, non-development purposes. Like limousines for your junior deputy ministers and stuff like that. Okay, so they say you will not. So we will give you the X million dollars, and you won't charge us VAT. Now, in many countries, that's difficult because the system's difficult, or the systems don't work very well. Yeah, not just difficult, or they don't work well. So the rule is for IPs, if you can register for VAT, in most countries you can register for VAT, you must register, which means you're likely to get the VAT back. Now, if it's a country where you're registered, in some countries in East Africa and Nigeria also, it's quite tough. You can register, you just never get the money back. So the example says, like, great, I get $100 to buy X, and I pay $115. VAT's 15 here. If I never get that back, eventually, I'm not the only NGO that has this problem. The mission, the finance office knows it's a problem in this country. The auditors know it's a problem. So eventually, it could be a write-off, okay? So what happens is each of you IPs on April 16th of each year, you have to fill out a form that explains, did you recover all your VAT? Okay, if you didn't, what happens is all these VAT, basically unfailed recollections, go to the embassy, goes to the economic attaché. She or he walks across to the Ministry of Finance and says, guys, you promised us that we're not promised, we agreed that you wouldn't withhold VAT. And they said, oh, but at the store level, they don't know what they're doing. You say, fine, we don't care about that, right? We've got X million dollars that our projects didn't get the money back. Give us the money back, okay? If they don't, it's either a 2 or 3 time penalty on the next year's allocation of U.S. government funding. So it's a penalty if the government doesn't pay it. So the U.S. government will collect it at the highest level, but never works its way back down to the organization. The auditors just say it's an acceptable cost. That's how it works. Good question. Okay, let's take 2 more. It's obviously I'm an hour and a half now beyond. I'm happy to do it, but some people gotta. We're down to 160 people now.
Yes, no worries. This question is about audits. If a US-based organization is a sub for a non-US based organization, can it be audited under the non-US based organization regulations?
No. So that organization, so again, let's just pick IntraHealth, FHI, whatever. They have many times they have offices overseas. Of course they do. And what happens is they will be incorporated into the audit of the mothership back home in Washington or wherever they are, Boston. So no. What happened if I'm auditing a prime here, a South African prime, and it has someone underneath them that's a US base, okay, I would effectively rely on the audit report from the US. And in that US audit report, that would be that subpart F program. They would have incorporated the South African subawardee in that audit. So it's an audit, and they never find anything. That starts getting way deep into other issues here, because AOs, if they know that these guys are not perfect overseas, and so some agreement officers order what's called an incurred cost audit or agency contracted audit, and in that sense, they could be audited. But the bottom line is generally no. Again, let's just pick FHI because we all know FHI 360. Okay, if they have an operation here in South Africa and they're sub to mothers or broad reach, then they would not have their own separate audit. Okay, I would ask if I was auditing mothers to mothers, I'd say, okay, you're the prime. You were supposed to manage these guys, and show me how you manage them. But then I would say, show me in this example, FHI 360's US audit, where your line item for your subrecipient fees are included, and that's it. We're done. Okay, we don't re-audit it. That would be double auditing, unless it's ordered by the mission. So the bottom line is no, we don't audit. They don't fall under the non-US guidelines. They fall under the US guidelines. That's the single audit concept. They are audited. That FHI is audited. 360 is one organization with all of their global operations. Next question.
Okay, the next question we have is, can you give some examples of strong items for cost share during an application for US award or proposal?
Okay, so cost share is where the US government, it's a sustainability concept where the US government says, we're going to give you $10 million over 5 years or $2 million a year for a normal 5-year project. And you, NGO, have to come up with some cost share, which means you're going to have to come up with activities or contributions. It used to be normally 10%, but now it specifically needs to be an amount, but normally people still use 10%. So these days it would be great. We're awarding you $10 million for your program, and you got to come up with $1 million of cost share. Okay, now that cost share does not need to be defined right now. It could be anything. It could be other people's money. It could be the government providing doctors, nurses, drugs, rent, office space, buses, transportation. It could be your people volunteering to work on weekends or anything else like that. So cost share is fairly wide. What can be used to contribute to the project? Okay, so rarely would it be defined. And I would actually suggest you don't define it, because then that might limit you to how you're going to cover your cost share. Okay, and there's a specific cost principle, not cost principle. There's a specific in the uniform guidance. There's that, and also in the mandatory standard provisions, there's a provision on cost share. Okay, good question, but don't limit yourself. South Africa, the government pays for all antiretrovirals, so that's easy, right? And normally that's easily 10% of a program. That certainly is a whopping number if you're doing a PEPFAR program. Okay, next.
The next question is, can a subawardee agreement be switched to a fixed award during grant implementation?
It probably could be, but I don't think it would be. Okay, I don't think it would make sense, obviously, but I don't think it would need prior approval. Let's just say that, and the AO would say why. Okay, if it worked well enough under a sub award, which is more onerous, but if it worked under that, you'd have to justify it to the AO. I can't say they wouldn't do it. I just think they'd say, no, let it play out. And if you want to give that organization more money, the next time, give them a fixed amount sub award.
Okay, the next question is, can you explain the difference between a pass-through entity and a pass-through cost?
Okay, a PTE, a pass-through entity, your example is a prime with the subrecipient. Okay, that's a pass-through entity. So we have a prime and they have a sub. That is the prime is the pass-through entity. And so therefore pass-through cost is whatever, the prime is going to have their own, essentially, well, if the consortium is going to have a proposal, it's going to be made up of all the technical aspects of the prime and the subs and all the costs of the prime and the subs. But then the sub-awardee is also going to have a cooperative agreement. It'll be a sub-agreement, but it'll be a cooperative agreement with its own budget, okay, its own costs. So those would be essentially pass-through costs. The sub has salaries. The sub has, they could have sub-awardees themselves. The sub has equipment. The sub has travel. Those are all pass-through costs effectively. Okay, so the sub has their own 10% de minimis. You don't sort of add them all up and then say to USAID, the primes taking all the 10% overhead. It doesn't work that way. The sub's going to get their own 10% de minimis. Okay, one more question.
This is the last question we have here, so it's great timing. It says, are there any changes to the cost principle apart from the three known: allowable, allocable, and reasonable? So with all the changes, does that principle change?
No, those are the fundamental things, and that's never going to change. I mean, that is so fundamental in concept that yeah, the short answer is no. I mean, it's documentation is the fourth one effectively, but that actually comes under allowability. If it's not documented, it's not allowable. I mean, those are it's just never. I don't think it's ever going to change. It's not now. Let's just say that that's not proposed that it's going to change now. Okay, so as promised, as I said, there is our details or my details. Certainly feel free to reach out if there's something I can send you. But ASAP, again, it's a fantastic program. It's continuing on for a few more months. So if you are in an ASAP country, which is normally the PEPFAR countries, reach out to your ASAP person or Melissa or whoever invited you. On the website, there's going to be the ASAP contact details. So please, again, this is going to be up for another 30 days. And yeah, I can't say I can't answer everyone's questions. I mean, we do have day jobs as well, but if it's something I can help you with, or ASAP, in many countries, ASAP has people like me who are there who can speak Portuguese or or French or whatever. So what's the other third one, Melissa? You said 3 languages.
English is the third.
Okay, all right. Like that one I can handle, but the French and the Portuguese I can't quite yet. Okay. As I said, I mean, this course you saw 1.5, 2.5 hours actually, but our full-blown course is on March 7th, 8th, 11, 12, 13. We do auditor training as well. ASAP. But again, I just want to thank ASAP, Melissa, I want to thank the whole team, Catherine, for making it available for me to share this knowledge with the local partners. So yeah, and frequently for any of you, we're sending out an email tomorrow. Before COVID, we used to come to almost every country that's on here, and someone would host us. Okay, sometimes it's the NGO, large NGOs, sometimes an audit firm does. We're going to start doing that again. So I'll be sending out an email to all the organizations that ever hosted us over the last 8 years, in London, in Nairobi, in every country, Lusaka, Lagos, Abuja, Kinshasa. We're going to go there for USAID, I think, anyways. And so there's a lot of opportunities to get this in person, which is really, to be honest, you have to admit, in person, I think, is more impactful than online. So yeah, we'll continue to do online, but just possibly, and if we do go to your country, again, you'll probably be reached out by. We'll ask a number of NGOs who else should we invite. We'll ask USAID who should we invite, and we'll ask the audit firms who should we invite. Okay, so again, that will be made available to you starting, we're starting in April, actually. Okay, so guys, thanks so much, guys. I hope some of this stuck. A lot of this probably could have went over your head if you are new to the game, but that's fine. I never expect you to remember a number, only that there's a rule for that. Just like there's an app for that, there's a rule for that. But I do want you to remember 405, right? Because allocability is the key. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you.
Yes,
Someone asked, how do we register for ASAP training? That,
Yes.
Melissa, how do we do that? That would be for you to send them to the ASAP site, right? There's a couple one next week. How do they register for our policies or our standard provisions?
Go ahead and follow the link, should take you to a website with upcoming webinars, and all of the registration links will be located there. So you can feel free, I sent the link in the chat. So feel free to visit that website. You can see all of our past webinars, as well as upcoming webinars. There's also a link on that same page with a link to register for our newsletter. And so you'll be notified via email about any new webinars that we have upcoming with registration links. So lots of amazing resources there on our ASAP website. And thank you so much, Doug, for taking extra time to answer questions. I know people find it very helpful, and we always love having you present for us. So thank you, everyone, for attending and for asking such thoughtful questions. And we look forward to seeing you next time, perhaps even next week. So thank you so much, everyone.
Cheers all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.